Chairman, we are now live.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of full council. I am Councillor Jeremy Cottam, Chairman of West Berkshire Council. The meeting is being live streamed via YouTube, so members of the public are able to follow the proceedings. Council members are present in the council chamber for this meeting. Any members of council who are in attendance remotely will be entitled to speak and ask questions when invited to do so by myself. The officers in attendance are the Chief Executive, Nigel Lynn, the Executive Director for Adult Social Care, Paul Coe, the Executive Director for Children and Family Services, Anne-Marie Dodds, the Executive Director for Resource, Joseph Holmes, and the Executive Director for Place, Claire Lawrence. Sarah Clark, the Monitoring Officer, will be the legal advisor to the meeting. I'm also assisted by Stephen Chard, the clerk to the meeting, and by Ben Ryan, who will be the Zoom host. Welcome, Honorary Alderman in attendance. I will now ask the Monitoring Officer to explain how voting on the items will be conducted.
Thank you, Chairman. In accordance with the Local Authorities Standing Orders England Regulations 2001 as amended, the names of those who vote for, against or abstain on any decisions relating to the setting of the Council's budget this evening will be recorded. Block votes will be taken in respect of the medium-term financial strategy, the investment and borrowing strategy, and on any proposed amendment to the capital or revenue budget proposals. This means that I will ask the leader of each group to indicate how their group will cast their votes, i.e. for, against, or to abstain. Once the leader has given that indication, I will ask the members of the group to raise their hands to confirm that they wish to vote as indicated by their leader. At the conclusion of the debate on the capital and revenue budget proposals, I will call out each member's name in alphabetical order, and each member must indicate how they wish to cast their vote, i.e. for the decision, against the decision, or if they wish to abstain from voting.
Thank you. Before we start this evening's meeting, I would like to take the opportunity to remind members that we are subject to the Council's Code of Conduct, which requires us to uphold certain standards, including, most importantly, respect. As Chairman, it is my responsibility to preside over these proceedings so that the business of the meeting can be carried out efficiently. On the agenda this evening are the budget proposals for the district for the next financial year. And as a local authority, we have a legal duty to set a balanced budget. This is therefore an important meeting with significant implications for all those living and working in the district. In order to assist with the effective and efficient consideration of all the business on the agenda for this meeting, the leaders of the political groups have met and agreed a set time for each part of the debate. I would also ask that members do not repeat points that have already been made, do not interrupt other members during their speeches, speak for no more than 3 minutes when not moving a motion or amendment. Members across the chamber may not always agree with one another, but I would ask that in our disagreements we endeavour to always be respectful of others' views. So this now takes me to agenda item 1, apologies. Can the Monitoring Officer advise of any apologies for the absence?
Thank you, Chairman. We have received apologies from councillors Nick Carter, Lee Dillon, B. Loco, and Councillor David Marsh, who I believe is attending via Zoom. And I've also been advised that Councillor Phil Barnett is slightly delayed, but he will be here hopefully before 6 p.m. We've also received apologies from Honorary Aldermen and Women, Graham Bridgman, Paul Bryant, Hilary Cole, Graham Jones, Rick Jones, Alan Law, Molly Locke, Gordon Lundy, Graham Pask, Andrew Rolls, and Anthony Stansfeld. Are there any further apologies from the floor?
I think Jeff Mays, Councillor Mays,
He's certainly late, but he may or may not make it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Monitoring officers to advise if there are any declarations of interest submitted prior to the meeting and if there are any declarations from the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. All members have completed an application for a grant of a dispensation in relation to any beneficial interest in land within the authority's area. The dispensation was granted to allow all members to speak and vote on the budget items. A number of personal interests have been declared in relation to the agenda items, and they have been published on the website and will be included in the minutes of the meeting. These have also been displayed on the door to the council chamber. I don't know whether there are any further interests to be declared from the floor. Councillor
Barnett.
Jeffrey.
Jeffries. There we go. Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just a detail, but an important detail. My declarations of interest are as they were last year, but this year I have the privilege of also being a member of the Royal Berkshire Fire Authority.
Thank you. Councillor Poole.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to declare that I am a business owner where my business resides within West Berks. I'm also the liaison for West Berkshire Council for AWE, and I'm also the West Berkshire Council representative for the Police and Crime Panel for TVP.
Thank you.
Can I just confirm that those interests are personal interests only that the members are declaring, so they do not preclude your ability to participate in the debate? Thank you. Both members have confirmed. Yeah, I've just done that.
Yeah. Thank you. So to end agenda item 3, public questions. I would like to thank the members of public that have submitted questions for this evening's council meeting and welcome those of you in attendance to hear the answers to your questions and to ask a supplementary question if you have one. Your question will appear on the screen and will be answered by the relevant portfolio holder. You will then be given an opportunity to ask a supplementary question, but please remember that this must be to clarify the response provided and not introduce any new business. Please note that there is a time limit for public questions restricted to 30 minutes. And if your questions have not been answered in that time, you will receive a written response, which I hope we don't need. So we go to the questions. Question A from Alan Pearce for Ian Cottingham.
Thank you, Mr. Pearce, for your question. We're getting feedback.
Can you turn off the microphone on the stand, please?
It's okay. Yes, so currently there is no allocation for funding in respect of the Faraday Road Stadium. Has been made in the 24-25 budget, so against the playing pitch strategy or the sports hub budgets. A statutory review is due to commence on the 27th of February 2024 to determine council priorities in respect of provision. No decisions regarding allocations will be made until the completion of this review, but this will not take long, and we will be seeking meetings with the NCFG and other stakeholders rapidly. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Obviously, you know, I've got an interest to. I have an interest to see the stadium rebuilt at Faraday Road in accordance with your manifesto. I was just a bit surprised not to see anything detailed in the finances to allow any allocation for funds to start that project. But that was all.
So, as I said there, we're doing a review. It will come, as I say, once that we've had the results of that review. As people know, that the budget doesn't mean everything is set in stone. So if there is a decision coming out of that review, once we know that, we'll then be able to allocate the funds accordingly.
Thank you. Mr Pearce. Now we'll move to question B in the name of Paul Morgan, again for Ian Cottingham.
Hello, Mr. Morgan. Thank you very much for your question. So the budgeted provision for expenditure against the playing pitch strategy has been made in the financial years of 24-25 and also for 25-26. No further expenditure is proposed as part of the future capital programme at this time, but the capital programme is being recalibrated regularly and will be re-profiled as necessary. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you for that answer. A bit curious, really. The budget, there's two projects that have got playing pitch strategy involved with the project, I think 29 and 250. My question is a simple one. That's, I guess, a legacy from the previous administration having it as two budgets. My question is a simple one. Why is there not just one budget covering the playing pitch strategy? Why have you still got two separate budgets for it?
The reason for that, Mr. Morgan, is we're waiting for the review, and then we'll then do the consolidation once we know what the review comes out with.
Not convinced, but thank you for the answer.
Thank you. If you stay at the stand, you have a question C in your name again for Ian Cottingham. Councillor Ian Cottingham.
Thank you very much for your second question. So the capital programme specified in Appendix A will be financed in the financial year 25-26. The level of financing in 25-26 will depend upon the level of expenditure incurred in 24-25 against the delivery of the planned programme. Capital is financed in arrears to ensure the council does not incur unnecessary financing costs. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I thought that'd be your answer, and it's my understanding as well. So again, just the only observation I'd like to make, which is a supplementary question, is that we've agreed earlier that you've got £3.18 million in for the to spend for next financial year, which by calculations are 2 months away. So how far have you got in terms of actually allocating that funds, really?
You won't be unsurprised, I will say, that we're waiting the results of the review before we know what.
Well, I'm disappointed, not surprised, but thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. We now continue to item 4, the medium-term financial strategy. May I invite Councillor Cottingham to formally move the recommendation on page 11 of the agenda pack, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the medium-term financial strategy, known as the MTFS, is a very important document which sets out the financial plan for the next 4 years, from 24-25 all the way through to 27-28, which is aligned to the delivery of our core...
Sorry, Councillor Cottingham, we need a seconder for this before the...
Okay.
Very happy to second, and in fact, Councillor Cottingham has now put it. Now we can speak, yeah?
And are you reserving your right?
I am reserving my right, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Apologies.
Now, please introduce the report.
I will introduce the report.
5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes. Right, so I'll continue. It's always a bit of a challenge to forecast financial performance over a 4-year timeframe, especially as we live in an unprecedented time of risk and uncertainty. The MTFS details the issues and risks facing West Berkshire concerning both revenue and cost. However, it does give stakeholders, employees, suppliers, residents a direction of travel for the financial resilience of West Berkshire Council. I would like to give a bit of context to the financial uncertainty facing councils across England, which was highlighted yesterday by the Local Government Information Unit annual poll of local authority leaders. It stated that nearly 1 in 10 councils in England have warned they will go bust in the next 12 months, with more than half saying they would go bust in the next 5 years without extra funding. The poll highlighted a near total collapse in confidence in the financial viability of councils as they grapple with desperate pressures and shrinking budgets. Only 4% of council leaders felt confident about the sustainability of local government finance. One particular respondent described running the council as being a permanent state of crisis management. So what does this mean for West Berkshire Council? As a quick reminder, after we took office in May, we received our first quarter financial results of 23-24. The Q1 revenue financial performance reported a projected year-end revenue overspend of 8 million, which would have exceeded the 7.2 million of general reserves. Therefore, our own crisis management required radical action to triage our finances back into shape. Without doing so, West Berkshire would now be facing a Section 114 bankruptcy notice, such as Birmingham, Slough and Wokingham, who have done so recently. Woking, sorry. We immediately set up a financial review panel with the primary task of improving the financial internal control environment for West Berkshire Council. For example, the cost of temporary and freelance staff had ballooned to an annual run rate of £12 million from 7 million a few years earlier, which now have been reduced to a current run rate of £9 million per annum. Each week, we meet to review all expenditure over 2K, sign off recruitment and consolidate external recruitment to a single provider, thus achieving economies of scale. This approach has brought West Berkshire Council back from the brink of bankruptcy, with the current projected revenue budget overspend for this year being reduced by nearly 5 million to 3.3 million. This will leave us with a projected 3.9 million, or a mere 8 days of general reserves at the end of this current financial year. So what has happened to our general reserves over the last 2 years? They were reduced by 4 million in 22-23, and to balance the budget in 23-24, general reserves were further reduced by 1.8 million. However, with this year's projected revenue overspend of 3.3 million, the general reserve reduction is forecast to be 5.1 million in 23-24. Therefore, over the last 2 years, general reserves have been reduced by 9.1 million. Our plan within the MTFS over the next 4 financial years is to replenish the general reserves by 6 million, thus improving our financial resilience to black swan events. To do so, and being honest and straightforward to the residents of West Berkshire, will require a yearly council tax increase of 2.99%, and the adult social care tax precept to increase by 2%. This planned 4.99% yearly council tax increase is due to the perfect storm of seeing the increase in adult social and children care costs, and secondly, the adequacy of central government funding is highlighted by the fact that West Berkshire only gets to keep 30 million of the 95 million business rates that it collects. So therefore, unless the next government addresses the crisis in social care costs and changes the method of local government funding, we can't see any change to this requirement to increase council tax by nearly 5% per annum over the lifetime of the MTFS report. I move to adopt it.
Thank you. Thank you. Therefore, I now open the debate to the floor. Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Cottingham, for presenting the MTFS. You presented it in a very conventional manner. It was nice. We heard a lot about the initiatives that you had, the financial review panel, reviewing all expenditure over 2K. In fact, a striking phrase there was you brought the council back from the brink of bankruptcy, which I think is, that weighs heavily on my mind. I tell you what, it was. Well, hold on, hold your horses. We're ignoring the elephant in the room, of course, here, Chairman. Have we all forgotten what happened on the 19th of December last year, when we all trooped in here to hear Councillor Vickers try and withdraw the West Berkshire local plan? Now, the government stepped in and stopped them from doing so. But you had up to, what, 1.7 million, nearly 2 million to play with, putting a new local plan together. That's not counting the cost of appeals. Now, I made sure to tell you all that night that that's it, you're done, you're over. You don't get to complain about money ever again. You don't get to sit there and say that we're reviewing every bit of expenditure over 2K when you were going to splurge nearly 2 million on a local plan withdrawal that would have left the district completely exposed to uncontrolled development without the infrastructure that was provided for in the local plan. They're shaking their heads, but they know it's true. So I'm afraid, Councillor Cottingham, we're ignoring that elephant in the room. You don't get to complain about money or agency staff ever again. The residents of West Berkshire know exactly how reckless this shambolic administration has been only 8 or 9 months into its tenure. So well done for putting a brave face on that, Councillor Cottingham. But we've not forgotten what happened in December, despite the fact that Councillor Vickers has refused to answer questions about it. Councillor Bowick, Councillor Stewart, Councillor Sumner and myself submitted questions to the last executive meeting. Councillor Vickers, of course, ducked that meeting. And in his written answers, he said, those questions are without merit and aren't going to receive an answer. We've not forgotten. The residents haven't forgotten. He's shaking his head, but he knows it's true. We've got the written answers. So, Councillor Cottingham, well done for presenting it with a straight bat, but it doesn't wash with us and it doesn't wash with residents.
Thank you. Are there any more contributions or comments? If not, Councillor Colston, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to say to Councillor McKinnon that I don't think you should get to lecture anybody about budgets and finances, since you were the one who proclaimed Liz Truss's budget to be the best Conservative budget since Margaret Thatcher. And look what happened to that.
Thank you. Are there any further? Councillor Canber.
I guess I'd just like to say that if you work on a basis that you are now ready in a strong financial base, that if you've managed to turn around such a terrible situation in such a short amount of time, you really should work for some of the big 6 accounting firms, because quite frankly, that would have been a miracle.
Thank you. Councillor Vickers.
Yeah. Providing me speech as someone who lost no time making an investment in it. I'm really pleased that we are continuing with the municipal bond scheme, as mentioned in para 5.9. I see Councillor McKinnon smiling, credit where credit's due. But it's sad that it took 9 years from the time the coalition government set up the agency for this purpose before this council actually endeavoured to join it. And I'll bet you that Ed Davey and Vince Cable had a hand in its design. So as I went knocking on doors in the leafier parts of Hungerford and Kintbury Ward a year ago, it quickly became apparent, and shouldn't have been a surprise, I suppose, that many households could afford to invest to protect themselves from the impacts of climate change within their own property, and have cash to spare to help this district tackle the climate emergency, as I did. There are many families who have not felt significant financial impact from the dire economic state of the country, mine included, and who are relatively unaffected by what has happened to our public services. And there's a long, long list of those services that are close to breaking point. Not surprising then, for every year we've had since 2009, the financial crash, GDP per person has either been static or fallen. That's the country we've inherited from you, your party opposite. However, the majority aren't so lucky, and we owe it to them to help facilitate this voluntary transfer of wealth from rich to poor, thus enabling us to move faster towards net zero carbon in the district. And I see that another council in Merseyside has launched a bond issue recently that is to raise money for social housing. So there's no limit to how much we can go dipping into the...
Because you have 1 minute left.
And let's do more of this. Thank you, Chairman.
Well timed. Thank you. Any further comments, questions? Thank you. I think that's it. Okay, if we move on. Councillor Brooks, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I did a little rehearsal in our group meeting. I played Councillor McKinnon. Shambolic,
You should be ashamed. We were ready. We were ready. You mentioned the local plan, of course you did. You left us with it. Thanks for that. Really nice sweeping up after you. The financial mess, the local plan mess. How many more messes are we going to find? Quite a few, I think. Care director, £750,000 lost on a software upgrade. We're still finding them. Now, I don't think you tell us what we can speak about. You say, you don't get to talk about agency staff anymore. You don't get, it's faux outrage. It's faux outrage. Like Mrs. Gamp out of Martin Chuzzlewich. Oh, isn't it terrible? Oh, we get it. We get it, Ross. We get it. We see it. We've seen it before. I've done it before, sitting where you are. And one thing I'd like to say to you, because actually the 1.7 million to fix the local plan was not going to be paid the day after we withdrew it. We'd have found the money over the next 2 years, for goodness sake. So let's get it in perspective. But, let me say this to you. It took me 18 years to build a narrative in opposition. Now, you're going to be in opposition quite a long time. You need to build your narrative quite slowly. Don't go flash to bang, just saying everything's a shambles, because people will stop listening. Build a narrative. We will get things wrong. I don't think we have it yet. Councillor Kander, we may not be top the big six, but I've got to tell you, it wasn't difficult to get a grip on a train or a car that was out of control. Out of control, sir. You don't know the half of it. And I'm not going to go into it tonight particularly. But this MTFS gets a grip. It sets out a plan for the next 4 years. We have got a grip, and by golly, one thing, Councillor McKenna, I promise you, I'm going to keep talking about the waste. I'm going to talking about the out of control spend, and you ain't going to stop me doing it. So this is a good MTFS. I'm delighted to second it, and thank you for all the work you've done on it. And thank you to all the officers throughout the authority that worked so hard on the MTFS, the budgets, the investment strategy. They deserve a real round of applause. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now ask Councillor Cottingham to make his concluding comments, please.
So as I stated earlier, the importance of the MTFS is really to give context of the direction of travel and gives reassurance to residents, stakeholders of West Berkshire that we are a going concern, but also details out our plans to repay back the reserves, which are being whittled down to a low of roughly 8 days. No organisation can cope with only 8 days worth of cash in the bank. So it's really important that we have financial resilience and financial prudence to repay back and improve our reserves to cope with black swan events. So I move this MTFS, which gives that reassurance and resilience back to West Berkshire's finances.
Thank you, Councillor. I will now ask the monitoring officer to conduct the formal vote.
Now you can take this as a block.
Yes, so
I don't need to ask you to take it as a block.
No, it's been agreed that we will do these en bloc. So I will ask the leader of each group to indicate how their group will cast their votes, and that will be for, against, or to abstain from the proposal. Once the leader has given that indication, I will then ask the members of the group to raise their hands to confirm that they wish to vote as indicated by the leader. The names of each member of that group will then be recorded in the minutes. So, Councillor Brooks, can you please give an indication of how the Liberal Democrat group wishes to vote in respect of this proposal?
This is an arcane procedure, isn't it? I'm now going to tell you we're going to vote for it, and then I'm going to look around and make sure they all do. How weird. We will be voting for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Can I please ask all members of the Liberal Democrat group to confirm by raising their hands that they wish to have their vote recorded as indicated by their leader? Thank you. And that is all hands. Thank you. Can I now ask for members, Councillor McKinnon, can you please give an indication of how the Conservative group wishes to vote in respect of the proposal?
Of course, Mrs. Clark. The Conservative group will vote for the MTFS.
Thank you. Can I please ask members of the Conservative group to confirm by raising their hands if they wish to have their vote recorded as indicated by their leader? Thank you. That's all members. Councillor Culver, can you please give an indication of how the minority or opposition group wishes to vote in respect of this proposal?
We intend to vote for.
Thank you. And can I ask members of the minority opposition group to confirm by raising their hands if they wish to have their votes as recorded as indicated by their leader? Thank you. Chairman, I can confirm that this proposal has been carried.
Thank you very much indeed. So we now move to agenda item 5, the investment and borrowing strategy, as seen in pages 29 to 60. May I ask, may I invite Councillor Ian Cottingham to formally move the recommendations on page 9 of the agenda pack, please.
Thank you, Chair. I formally moved to propose this item on the agenda.
Thank you. Can I ask for a seconder, please?
We're having a second. Thank you, Chair.
And do you wish to reserve your right to speak?
Reserve my right. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor Cottingham, please introduce the report. You have 5 minutes to introduce it.
Thank you, Chair. So, as previously mentioned, we live in a period of unprecedented uncertainty of risk. Therefore, it's critical that we manage our liquidity risk in a prudent, risk-averse way. Recent history has seen organisations chasing returns that are too good to be true. Those of us with longer memories remember the Bank of Credit and Commerce International in the 70s and the recent financial crash of banks in 2008. Our investment and borrowing strategy sets out where we borrow and invest cash. It is therefore imperative that our Treasury team understand and evaluate the risk of placing your money with financial institutions. I can confirm there is a rigorous process to assess risk and comply with the Treasury management indicators, such as having an average of 10 million of liquid investment cash funds on deposit. Our projected borrowing levels are significantly below our boundary levels, which helps fund the capital programme 1 year in arrears. The capital programme is funded by a mixture of external borrowing, internal cash and capital receipts from the divestment of assets, i.e. our commercial property portfolio. Historically, the weighted average cost of Public Works Loan Board borrowing is 3.5%. Currently, the cost of borrowing from the Public Works Loan Board is roughly around about 5.5%. Hence the strategy of short-term borrowing rather than long-term high. Until interest rates start to fall towards the average cost of 3.5%, we will continue this policy of short-term borrowing. It also makes financial sense to recycle the capital proceeds arising from the divestment of our buy-to-let commercial property portfolio. Monies which were originally borrowed at 2.5% into our own capital programme, thus saving roughly 3% interest on the cost of borrowing. I'm pleased to confirm that we'll be relaunching a municipal bond. We previously issued a 1 million community bond in support of green initiatives across West Berkshire. We plan to reissue a similar bond in 24-25 to help fund the solar farm. Another source of finance that we are evaluating is the UK Infrastructure Bank, which is wholly owned by the Treasury. This allows local authorities to access funding below the Public Works Loan Board rates. In summary, West Berkshire estimates that level of borrowing will be 168 million, or just under £1,100 per resident at the end of the current financial year, 23-24. Then it will fall to 164 million, i.e. £965 per resident by the end of 27-28. And lastly, our Section 151 officer is confident that the investment and borrowing strategy provides effective, robust and a prudent platform to support the Council's capital programme and approved strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So I therefore now open the debate to the floor. Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And I'll say this to Councillor Brooks, he talked about the time he was in opposition there for a while. One of the things that I'm getting used to very quickly is not getting the last word in these things, because that's a privilege that the administration have. I don't like it. I don't like it at all, because it means I'm always sort of chasing my tail. Right? Councillor Brooks talked about how he discovered the care director cost. The only reason he would have discovered that after he became in administration was if he didn't read the capital programme in the last year's budget, because it was in there and all. point it out to you where it was, but I'm going to try and stop coming back to you because just bored everyone. Now, look, Councillor Cottingham, again, lovely presentation. And in fact, the theme that you went with there was about de-risking. You're talking about risk aversion, prudence. As a lecturer in banking and finance myself, that's right up my street, I tell you. Harking back to the commercial property investments, at the time when the executive were considering changing the strategy, there was a lot of talk from yourself and colleagues about needing to de-risk the council's investments. The commercial property portfolio was just too risky, and I see that view has some merit. I would remind the council, of course, that when we established the commercial property portfolio back in 2018, it was with the full-throated and wholehearted support of the then Liberal Democrat opposition. I believe Councillor Macro it was who told us we should have done it earlier and should be doing more of it. But there we are. But harking back to that executive, it is worth saying, Councillor Brooks said that he doesn't think you've made too many mistakes. I think there was a bit of a mistake made with that, wasn't there? The executive didn't really know what it was doing. And that's a jibe that opposition will sometimes throw at the administration and back at you. But it was literally true in that case. The executive met to change the property investment strategy at an executive meeting. Now, we called it in because we didn't think it was a good idea, but it was only after we'd called it in did we discover that the executive didn't have the power to change the property investment strategy. And we had more fudging in that next scrutiny meeting than Thornton's would have known what to do with. So it didn't paint the executive in a great light. They literally didn't know what they were doing. We see in the new property investment strategy now that we've changed the strategy. It now says that the council is planning to disinvest in the portfolio over the long term. That's an improvement, although it's still disclosing your position. It's still saying to the market that you're looking to disinvest, but at least there's no hard deadline that there was before. I know this isn't question time, Ian, Councillor Cottingham, but I know you get to come back, and sadly, Councillor Brooks does too. So I'm going to float a question out, and hopefully you'll answer it. In 5.17 of this report, in the investment section, the council is authorising itself to invest up to £17.5 million in real estate investment trusts. Now, just to give you an idea of what those are risky investment portfolios. You buy units in real estate investment trusts, the trust then goes and buys real estate and it earns rental income from them and it gets a capital gain on them. What do you think the council does when it invests directly in commercial property? That's right, folks. It earns rental income from its direct investments and it hopefully benefits from a capital gain over the long term. So for all the talk from the Liberal Democrats about de-risking the investments, they're authorising themselves to put £17.5 million in risky real estate investment trusts. That is not de-risking, Councillor Cottingham. That is not exiting from real estate investments.
Sorry, Councillor McKinnon, you need to start winding up.
Sorry, that's my point. What's going on with that?
Thank you. We have Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chairman. I guess I work on a slightly different set of rules to all of you lot seem to, because just because you can borrow money, in my mind. So sorry, I could shout louder. Is that any better for everybody? Okay. Thanks. Just because you can spend money doesn't mean you should. Just because you can borrow loads of money doesn't mean you should. And picking up on what Councillor McKinnon has just been talking about, this whole property investment saga, what that really came down to was a piece of history where everybody was told, oh, this is a good idea. Let's go buy some property. And guess what? All of the councils who could borrow loads of money went out and go, could you give me some advice, please, on which properties to buy? And they created a market for themselves where one set of people were competing against another set of people, but those people were both councils. So what happened is property prices got overly inflated. And now, funnily enough, when it turns out the money isn't cheap anymore and we have to disinvest in that, we're in a slightly odd position because those same property values haven't maintained themselves. But fortunately, interest rates, it's kind of an odd fortunate, but interest rates have gone up so much, it's still the right thing to do to get rid of it. But, we shouldn't have done it in the first place. And that's the truth of the thing. So, yeah, we made some rental income. Fantastic. But if we'd actually invested all of that money in things like solar, in things like alternate energy at the time that it was all in the market across West Berkshire, we'd have the same revenue stream by now. And funnily enough, we wouldn't have all the costs and have to be divesting of all sorts of other stuff. Now, care director was mentioned as well, and I happened to be on the executive when that came through. What a debacle. What an absolute debacle. And I totally support the Lib Dems in identifying it as a complete and utter waste of money. It's an IT project run badly, and it should never have been allowed to carry on as long as it did. And I'm afraid it was allowed to carry on under the previous administration. The Liberal Democrats are just fixing the situation.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. You have not 1 minute to go.
I just finished.
Oh, excellent timing.
Thank you anyway.
Well done. Thank you. Much appreciated. Any further questions or comments? No, thank you very much indeed. So may I invite Councillor Brooks to speak as seconder?
Yeah, I used to do that as well, because I couldn't get the last word, so wait for me next speech to try and get the last word. But ultimately, you run out of another speech, you know? Okay, and it's interesting you keep praising Councillor Cottingham. It's the old trick, isn't it? Damn people with faint praise. I've been doing it myself for a while. You talk about this property portfolio and shock horror. We're getting out of it. And yet we're going to invest. Councillor Cottingham will pick that up about we're investing in real estate. And then you go on and on and on about, oh, there was a mistake in the executive. Keep going on about that, because it's so arcane. I'm surprised 50 people across the district will understand. So keep going on that line of attack. That'll work. Let's look at this valuation, this property portfolio. We want to bring that money to bear for the citizens, the residents of West Berkshire Council. So over time, we sell those properties, which are all up and down the country. Do the residents of West Berkshire Council know that we actually bought a building that's got a fish and chip shop in it? I mean, this is really high-tech estate, isn't it? You know, and if we get out of that, if we let that fish and chip shop go, I think the fish and chip's quite nice, I hear. But if we let that go and we bring that money back, we can use it in different ways. We can reduce borrowing, we can invest, we can build, we can do things for the residents of West Berkshire better than the bit of money we used to get in. It was over £1 million, it wasn't tiny, but we could do things better with that money. And as for the valuation, you're going to go on with a valuation about it for so many years, Councillor McKinnon. I know you are, but actually you know as well as we do, the book value was in the public domain. Don't treat the market as if they're thick. They were able to look at the book value any time they liked before we decided to actually see about selling them. And you're suggesting that suddenly we gave away some secret. We did not. We did not. So again, I think we're going to agree on quite a lot of things in terms of this investment treasury portfolio. I think perhaps across the chamber, but I did feel I had to pick up some of the points Councillor McKinnon make. But eat into your next speech to counter some of these if you want to.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. So may I invite the mover of the motion, Councillor Cottingham, to make concluding comments, please.
Thank you, Chair. So just picking up on Councillor McKinnon's point on real estate investment trust. It's in the document giving us the options. Highly unlikely we would ever invest in this area. I will have a bit of personal disclosure. I know within my own pension portfolio, I've invested in these areas, and I would say that the performance hasn't been great. So as long as I'm in charge of finance for the administration, we will not be investing in these areas because it is, as you say, quite a high degree of risk, especially in the current environment. However, if things were to move from a property perspective and returns, it would be silly of us not to have this option of being able to invest. So it gives us the option, but it's highly unlikely we would ever do so. So going back to my primary point is the fact that this particular strategy is all about making sure we evaluate the risk and secure funds in the for the residents of West Berkshire in a way in which we, as I say, protects the interest and divests risk. So I move this particular report.
Thank you. So I will now ask the monitoring officer to conduct the formal vote, please.
Thank you. So I will again ask the leader of each group to indicate how their group will cast their votes. And once the leader has given that indication, I will ask members of the group to raise their hands to confirm. So Councillor Brooks, can you please give an indication of how the Liberal Democrat group wishes to vote in respect of this proposal?
Vote for this motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Can I please ask all members of the Liberal Democrat group to confirm by raising their hands that they wish to have their vote recorded as indicated by the leader? Thank you. Yes. So can I just clarify, Councillor Barnett, I don't think you had your hand raised there.
I abstain because I wasn't present for the whole of the debate.
Thank you. We had noted your apologies for the delay. Thank you. So Councillor McKinnon, can you please give an indication of how the Conservative group wishes to vote?
Yeah, happily, the Conservative group will vote for the investment borrowing strategy.
Thank you. Can I please ask members of the Conservative group to confirm by raising their hands that they wish to have their vote recorded as indicated by their leader? Thank you. That's all members. And Councillor Culver, can you please give an indication of how the minority opposition group wishes to vote in respect of the proposal?
We will vote for, and just as a point of information, I haven't launched a coup against Councillor Marsh. He's on the screen, as members have probably noticed. He's very unwell and he's at home. So we do need to note also that he had his hand up earlier and missed that. So I'll keep my eye out. But yeah, to clarify, Chairman, we are going to vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And apologies to Councillor Marsh that I missed that. I did have, I was checking. So please do let me know. Thank you. Can I ask members of the minority opposition group to confirm their votes? Thank you. Chairman, I can confirm that this proposal has been carried.
Thank you very much. So we now move to agenda item number 6, the capital strategy, pages 61 to 102. May I invite Councillor Ian Cottingham to formally move the recommendations on page 61 of the agenda pack, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move to adopt this report, please.
Thank you. So may I ask for a seconder?
Happy to second and reserve my right. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. So, Councillor Cottingham, will you please introduce the report? You have 10 minutes to.
Thank you, Chair. So, as you can appreciate, this is a big day for the newly elected Lib Dem administration. 18 years in opposition is a long time. It therefore gives me great pleasure and pride in proposing the first Lib Dem West Berkshire Council capital budget since 2005. The primary purpose of any budget is the financial representation of West Berkshire's strategic plan. West Berkshire strategy was universally approved by all parties in this chamber last year. Our proposed capital programme over the next 10 years will be investing 330 million into West Berkshire across the 5 strategic pillars within the strategy. For example, 123 million will be invested in improving the prosperity and resilience of West Berkshire, 145 million making West Berkshire fairer with opportunities for all, 28 million tackling climate change and the ecological emergency. This investment requires an implied council borrowing of 140 million, which, as we previously discussed, total borrowing will be below a prudent rate of £1,000 per resident. For the forthcoming year ahead, we plan to invest 53 million in a range of schemes right across the district, which include 10.5 million for education, 4 million for highways improvements, works to the byways of Lambourne and Winbourne, Speedmoor's works to improve biodiversity and reduce maintenance, active travel schemes of 1 million, solar farms and microelectric feasibility. There also will be the final stage of the thatch and flood alleviation scheme, which is funded by the environmental agency managed by West Berkshire Council, and also a bus service improvement plan. I will, however, let my front bench colleagues provide more details of CapEx for their portfolios in due course after I've ended my speech. A key element to fund the capital investment into West Berkshire is the flexible use of capital receipts. As we discussed earlier, the government has advised that local government authorities should de-risk their exposure to speculative commercial buy-to-let property investments, We currently have a strategic plan with our third-party property agent, Montague Evans, to dispose of the buy-to-let commercial property portfolio in a structured way, which delivers best value to the residents of West Berkshire. I would like to use this opportunity to put on record that despite the propaganda from the opposition, the disposal of our buy-to-let commercial property is not a fire sale. The value of buy-to-let commercial properties is very well known to the market, potential buyers, and we will spend investor capital receipts for the good of West Berkshire residents. And finally, on the question of the proposed change to minimum revenue provision, this is a technical accounting policy change which will be validated by new external auditors. We have obtained external advice that the previous policy was too prudent, effectively repaying capital too soon. Therefore, without jeopardising the financial resilience of West Berkshire, we can delay the accounting charge to a later date, thus taking advantage of the time value of money. I move to adopt.
Thank you. And we have some amendments by the minority group. So I will ask Councillor Caroline Culver to formally move minority group amendments, and Councillor Culver has 5 minutes to move the amendments.
I formally move the amendments, Chairman.
Thank you. We need a seconder, please.
I'm happy to second, but Chairman, we're kind of slightly odd situation. I would like to speak as a ward member separately to seconding on the Falkland School part of the amendment. Would that be possible at all?
Members can only speak once to each debate, so either as the debate's on the amendment, so you only
can we make it clear that the comments that are made referring to Falklands are very, very important because I'm the ward member there.
So you as seconder, you have 5 minutes to speak.
Yes, but there are significant other things to discuss, which is that I'm asking for a small amount of largesse here. 2 to 3 minutes maximum is all I would need.
I think the timings have been agreed by the group leaders in the pre-meet. So I think.
Well, may I put on the record that this is just restricting our opportunity to discuss some important aspects for the sake of 2 or 3 minutes in a whole evening's worth of exercise.
You do have 5 minutes to put your case.
Yes, there's also an awful lot of IT amendments, etc., to go through. So there's really not enough time to go through it all, but never mind.
Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Culver.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So I'm making this speech this evening instead of Councillor Marsh, who worked very hard on it. So thank you very much. I hope I do it service. This amendment is not a case of special pleading for a school in a member's ward. Our group would support this amendment wherever in West Berkshire the school happens to be. Because these are special circumstances, and that is the reason we urgently want to see you bring forward funding to rebuild the crumbling junior classrooms at Falkland Primary School. On January the 11th, 2024, the school received the devastating news that funding to replace its modular junior classrooms, which had been promised for years, had once again been postponed. The ward members may have more to say about this, but I understand that these classrooms are cold and damp, with splits in the floor, and many of the gas heaters no longer work. But the school rightly delayed replacing them because it had been promised a new building. The council supported this policy. So the problem has got worse. The children and staff are cold, and the school faces an ever bigger drain on its budget for heating. As far back as September 2021, but post-COVID, Councillor Marsh received an assurance from the then Director of Education to quote, "This project is currently programmed for design in 2022-23 and sits within the Council's approved capital programme. The project is fully funded. I hope this reassures you that the Falkland project is still in train," close quotes. A few months later, in the February 2022 capital budget approved by members, funding of 3.7 million was allocated in detail across 4 years. 87,000 in 22-23, 2.5 million in 23-24, 1 million in 24-25 and 75,000 in 25-26. But this sorry saga does not end here. In May 2022, the school received the good news that procurement of the design team was indeed taking place and that building work was expected to start in summer or early autumn 2023. The council wrote to the school to say the project is in the approved capital programme and is fully funded, so everything is in place. So what could possibly go wrong? In March 2023, a project officer was assigned and another submission was sent to the procurement board to an architectural design team to appoint them. The busy head teacher and business manager then spent much of last spring and summer being visited by potential architects. The project officer even wrote on July the 11th last year, asking if they could be available during the school summer holidays to preserve the timeline. Then nothing until October last year, when the school was told out of the blue that a council review panel would decide if and when the works would begin. Finally, when we got to the budget papers last month, there it was or wasn't. All 4 million had been pushed back to the budget for 2025-26. There was nothing at all in 24-25 until Councillor Codling, in response to executive questions from Councillor Marsh and a member of the public, announced that there would be a small amount of funding for, wait for it, a design phase, that it rather feels as if we have already been through at least twice. Apologies for going into the background in such detail, but you can understand the anger and frustration from the parents and the carers at Falkland. The good news is that our amendment, as the Section 115 officers' comments make very clear in the agenda pack, will have little impact on the 24-25 finances. Of the 4 million allocated to 25-26 for a 2-year building project, we are proposing to bring half forward to 24-25. Of that 2 million, nearly all of it would be front-ended with external funding, including grants, SIL and Section 106. So very little, if any, borrowing would be incurred until next year. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abbs, would you like to speak now or hold your?
Thanks very much. I'm going to talk about the capital IT amendments to start with, reference 109, 113 and 150. Just so you all know, 40 years in the IT world, I consider myself an expert in this area, so please take everything I say with that in mind. Now, a lot of what I'm talking about is looking at moving some of these things potentially into the cloud. And usually when companies look at that, they don't actually take into account the full total cost of ownership of going to do it. They will look at maybe the hardware or this or that, but they don't really look at the whole thing. And this is where the major reason I think that the officer's comment is incorrect, that they won't have looked at the proper total cost of ownership associated with keeping it in-house or in fact moving it to the cloud. Secondly, the council tends to go for the gold-plated everything. You've all been around for long enough now. We very rarely go for the best value. We seem to go, well, let's pay the most and because that'll deliver the best. That isn't always true. It is certainly not true in IT. So I don't believe that the council reached the right conclusion. Transformation could be capitalised, as we know, and worst case, we should be extending the warranties on the existing devices while we look at it. Second part is amendment reference 112. It assumes that all the MFD devices need replacing all at once. Never heard of anything so silly in my life. Yeah, by all means, negotiate a volume discount, but you then implement when they fail. As they fail, they don't completely blow up. In other words, you get a whole set of spares. So funnily enough, as you slowly transition over the next few years with these MFDs, you actually have a large stock of spares that you can use to keep yourself going. So we can save some money there as well. And all I'm doing, by the way, is telling you how to save money. I'm not telling you anything else. Full fibre to schools. All credit to the Conservatives. Did you not say that we'd finished the rollout of full fibre across West Berkshire 2 years ago? Pretty sure that I heard that as an opposition member then. So if we finished the full fibre rollout 2 years ago, how can we miss the schools? And if there's something so hard to do with the school, why on earth aren't we just using something like Starlink? It's a hell of a lot cheaper. It's 1/10 the cost. Okay, we do not need to spend public money. And I realize a grant is associated with this, but a grant is still public money. And I do not want to be wasting the public purse in this way. Next is a very small item. It's 10K for the museum. We are in a financial crisis. As much as this administration is doing its best to dig us back out of it, we know that we're having to rebuild the reserves. 10K to buy some more bits when they can be accepted on long-term loans and things of that nature just gives us another 10K saving, which can be used elsewhere. And finally, the paper. Now, I saw on the news today, Kennet Radio News, but news today about how these parchments of Berkshire County Council, need to be looked after. Of course they do, but they're already stored somewhere. This is about expanding the facility. Well, that's certainly what it says in the papers. Expanding means I'm going to need to store new stuff. New stuff is modern paper, which has to go from digital paper and then stored. It does not a lot of sense. Now, we've just heard about the school needing some money, right? So would you really want to spend 2.5 million on building a space for some extra to store paper, or do you want to deliver a school? I think I know where I go, because let's quote ourselves, nobody should be enslaved by poverty, ignorance, or conformity. I think I'd like the new school, please, every time. So, we are in the digital age. There are plenty of solutions. We should be lobbying as a team to go to government to say, come on, use blockchain encryption. Why do we need to store paper? In fact, if we digitize it, we can do a lot better than that. We can make it a searchable archive that's actually useful going forward. I do want to come back to Falkland Primary School.
Councillor, you have 1 minute.
Thank you very much. It's just about enough. This head has specifically sent me emails, Mrs. Kaivash Amfield. She's very upset about this, as you've heard already. The teachers are telling me about how much they're wasting time dealing with no heating, blocked toilets, broken floors. Come on. This is a local school that we're meant to be looking after. We need to be getting on with it. Yes, we had COVID. Yes, we have financial implications, but we have a way of finding the money, shifting it around and actually delivering something. All we're saying is, let's make sure the money is available now. If we do get the project manager in place, if we are able to do it, we can spend it and get the thing built. And that's what everybody wants. And I'm going to finish there. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. So I now open the debate on the proposed minority group amendments. Councillor Bowick, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. And I'm afraid that some of what I'm going to say now overlaps with what you heard from Councillors Culver and Abbs, but please forgive me. Prior to the Liberal Democrats taking control of the council last year, West Berkshire was in the enviable position of having 94% of our schools rated as good or outstanding by Ofsted. 98% of our children were able to go to a school that their parents chose for them. Both of our special schools, the Castle School and Brookfields, retained their outstanding rating. Our excellent capital strategy continued to grow and maintain our school estate. During lockdown, we opened 2 brand new primary schools to keep pace with demand for spaces, and we provided new and improved educational facilities across the district, including a new early years unit at Speenhamland Primary. We started work on new provision for secondary age children with special educational needs at the Old Field Primary site, and a similar provision for primary age children at Kennet Valley Primary. Provision of good quality facilities is vital for children to attain the best outcomes that they can, but so is effective and timely maintenance. Last week, the poor state of repair of Falkland Primary meant that all 426 of their children were sent home when water ingress took out their main electrical distribution board. Much of the teaching there is delivered in 8 classrooms in flat-out porta cabins that should have been replaced by now. Children return to their classrooms.
Please.
Children return. I'll explain. Children returned to their classrooms at the end of last week, but with reduced power, heating and lighting services in the already substandard porta cabins. In 2021, a project to replace the 8 porta cabin classrooms had entered the capital programme with funding allocated. In May 22, the £3.7 million project had its funding approved, as we heard earlier, and the school was told to expect it to commence in autumn 23. The last capital programme that we agreed showed the work starting this year, but in April, the project officer confirmed that the project had formally been activated by submitting a strategy document for consideration by a procurement board the following month. And that's where you all came in. After all our officers' hard work and the assurances that were given to Falkland Primary, when you got control of the checkbook in May, you looked at this project, scheduled to start after the summer break, and said, no, we're not going to do that. Let's push it back a couple of years. Shake your head, Councillor Vickers. In October, the school was told that the project was waiting further approval. And then in January, when you published your capital programme, it told us that it would not start until sometime in the financial year 25 to 26, which is where it remains. This is simply unacceptable. How can you have reached the conclusion that this upgrade to poor accommodation could be delayed even further when all you had to do was write out the check? Our children deserve better than this. At the executive committee on 8th February, I asked Councillor Brooks for his assurance that he will always put children first. He would not give me that assurance. Instead, he contrived to blame me for the delays to the Porter Cabin project. All you had to do, Councillor Brooks, was write out the check. I'm pleased to see this amendment to the capital strategy, which will bring forward a significant proportion of the Falkland project to the forthcoming financial year. It should have started already, but you have missed that opportunity. You need to move fast to minimise further delays and disruption to education, Councillor Brooks, education, and that starts tonight with this amendment. Chairman, members, we all want the best for our children. We all have a duty of care towards them, none more so than Councillor Codling and Councillor Brooks, Deputy Leader.
Councillor Burke, you have 1 minute.
If that is to mean anything, then you must all join me in voting for this amendment to the capital strategy. Not to will be a dereliction of your duty.
Thank you, Councillor. We now have Councillor Codling, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with Councillor Bowick. These buildings should have been built a long time ago, not just recently.
You'll learn these projects take a long time. 18 years. Yeah. 18 years.
Please let the speaker finish.
I also agree that we should be putting children first. That's what we're here for. Now, as my understanding is that it was a feasibility study that was carried out, not a design. There was a lot of toing and froing, I do understand. Unfortunately, during this last year, we lost a couple of members of staff and we've struggled to get good project managers in their place. We have been trying to recruit them. And it is on record that we've had this problem. When the new director for Children's Services came in at the end of this year, we reviewed the capital programme and Falkland was brought to the top of the pile and it was prioritised. We have included a design statement taken on from the feasibility study to be done in this year. And that originally we had 40,000 in the budget for that. We have actually now moved 250,000 into the budget for this year so that we can actually move the project forward. I have checked with Mr. Holmes about the funding for this, and should we be able to get this project finished in this year, the funds will be available. We are able to bring them forward if we need them, because a lot of it is still in Section 106 money. So I can assure you that we are determined to get this project off the ground, started in this year, and if at all possible, finished. But we know these projects are not something that happen overnight, but we will do our utmost to get it done as quickly as possible. I will be getting regular updates and I will be keeping a very close eye on this project.
Thank you, Councillor. We have Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. I too, very much like Councillor Abbs, have worked in IT for a number of years, not quite as much as an illustrious career as Councillor Abbs, I'll have to say. But I have also worked before the world of cloud came along, often used to be called computing on demand, and then came software as a service, and then the rather ethereal word of cloud came in as well. And in fact, so I've written white papers for rather large telcos. I've worked for large hosting companies, writing business cases, working with very experienced financial officers on how to make money out of these. And I must admit, cloud is very interesting. It's very useful for startups who have lots of revenue, lots of OPEX, but not a lot of CAPEX. And they don't want to take on capital assets. It's my experience that typically you are in a better position if you have that capital money. Your total cost of ownership is going to be a lot better. Hosting companies typically look to start making money from their investment within 18 months and certainly before 24 months of buying that capital asset. So if you're looking to keep hold of that asset for longer than 24 months, 3 years, 4 years, then you're always better to buy it up front and as a capital cost. Maintenance costs tend to be quite low, 5 to 7%. And if you've got the experience within the organisation to maintain or to administer those assets and absolutely drive the maximum amount of capacity out of them in usage, then my recommendation is always buy before renting through cloud. It's so much cheaper in the long run. That's just my points.
Thank you, Councillor. We have Councillor Marsh would like to say something.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry I can't be with you. I've got pneumonia, and believe me, you don't want me there. It's very contagious. However, I'll try and keep going. The minority group are doing a great job without me, actually, and not trying to score political points off other parties. They haven't mentioned other parties at all in their speeches, which I think reflects great credit on Councillors Culver and Abbs. But I would like to thank Councillor Bowick for the Conservative support for this proposal. And in fact, our original plan was that he would second it. But of course, the council hasn't yet got to the stage where cross-party cooperation of the kind that we like to see can actually happen in that way. Anyway, I just want to add to what Caroline said and what Councillor Culver said in her excellent speech about Falkland. You've heard that despite the full funding, the approved capital programme, the submissions to the procurement board, the designers, the architects, and the numerous promises, the children and staff at Falkland Primary School are still waiting for classrooms that are fit for purpose. I visit the school regularly. I can tell you those junior classrooms are indeed cold, damp and gloomy. Somehow the children remain happy and committed to their learning, supported by a brilliant staff and leadership team. But it's not sustainable if the work isn't done. Neighbouring schools are generally in a much better state, and just across the road at Highwood Copse, there's a beautiful new state-of-the-art primary school run by an academy trust. Falkland parents and carers are entitled to think, what have we done to deserve this? They think their school, as Councillor Abbs said, has been neglected by the council, and I agree with them. The despair over the latest delays to the capital programme for new classrooms has been compounded over the last couple of weeks, as Councillor Bowick mentioned, by flooding in the school roof, the loss of electricity. Until the school itself had an emergency generator, many of the children have been going to other schools in the area. And I must say that with one exception, local primary schools have been fantastic, as have other local community organisations. It does the heart good to see the way people have rallied round. I'm not going to say more now about this current issue with the electricity and the flooding, as it's not part of our amendment. But it has raised a number of questions about the council's stewardship of the school fabric during the years, and we will be pursuing them in due course. What I will do is ask Councillor Codling.
Councillor Marsh, you have 1 minute left.
Councillor Codling, for a commitment to ensure the school does not have to pay to repair the roof. They shouldn't be out of pocket through no fault alone. So just to sum up, there was no funding for primary school in the budget for the next year until the school leadership, governors, parents, carers and councillors showed they were not prepared to accept that without a fight. There's no problem with agreeing to this, because we're saying the same thing that Councillor Codling said. The money, the external money, is available. it's been confirmed by Mr. Holmes. So all you've got to do is just bring it forward so that if you are able to start the work, the money will be there. I cannot see any argument against that at all. I don't think it's too much to ask. And I really do urge members of all parties not to vote en bloc, but to empathise. What if it was your children's or grandchildren's school, and support this amendment? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. We have for Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Look, Councillor Marsh is completely correct, which is a statement that I've got used to saying actually since last May. It didn't really happen too much in the last 4 years while we were in administration, but it's nice to happen now. And get well soon, Councillor Marsh. That sounds pretty nasty. I wish you all the best. He's quite right in what he said. It was interesting to hear what Councillor Codling said about, look, if the work progresses and we need the money, we'll do it. Well, look, let's send that message. It does no harm to anyone to bring forward that funding in the capital programme, but what it may well do is give some assurance to Falkland parents and pupils that the council is serious about it. And I wonder, Chairman, I know it's your discretion, but perhaps a separate vote on 2 different parts of the amendments might help the administration. I think, you know, I don't want to speak for my group, but I think I'd be fully supportive of the Falkland element of this amendment. I must say to the Liberal Democrats opposite, it's not been too bad tonight, has it? With the party political stuff?
There's a long way to go.
It's been okay. I know Councillor Marsh is making his point as he's entitled to do. Councillor Abbs did have a wee dig at the Conservatives, though he must have missed that. But given his less than 100% health, we'll let Councillor Marsh off that one. But I'm not angry with you folks. I'm just disappointed. When Councillor Boyd was talking about the delays to Falkland School, what we had was, oh, what about you? What about you? Yeah, you know. But that's just a bit disappointing, isn't it? Yes, we were good to go in 2020. Something did happen in 2020, which put a lot of things on hold. You might remember it. And it's all very well sneering and saying, what about you? What about you? That is not the actions of an administration which welcomes scrutiny, which we are told all the time that you do. Now, yeah, you can criticise us for decisions taken before May 2023. We're big enough, we can take it on the chin. But after May 23, that's on you. So when we criticise you, and it will be critical, and we scrutinise you for stuff you did after May 2023, don't say, what about you? What about you? Take responsibility, defend your position and argue with integrity. Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, I'd just like to pick up on a point that Councillor Reid made earlier. West Berks Council has no capital. If we borrow, then it's a loan with interest. This alone goes a long way to pay for a possible cloud option. That's all I'd like to say.
Thank you. Are there any, Councillor Woolston?
Thank you, Chairman. I also would work on splitting this amendment. I want to talk briefly about what was the Berkshire Records Office and is now the Royal Berkshire Archives. Councillor Abbs, unfortunately, is under some misapprehension. We've run out of space there. It's a fantastic facility. Probably, I was going to say world class, it's probably a bit too far. But it's not new documents that are coming in. It's more old documents, and they need protecting in an environment that's suitable. The people down there, some of them volunteers, are outstanding. They are curators, they repair books and manuscripts. And just to remind everybody, this isn't 2.5 million from our budget. It's split between 6 unitary authorities, and it's over 2 years. So we're talking about £200,000 a year for 2 years. So I welcome splitting it because I have a problem with his comments on the Royal Berkshire Archives. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Unless there's any other comments, Councillor Kander.
Hello, thank you. So I don't intend sniping at any particular political party, but I like to deal in facts, etc. So first of all, Councillor Brooks, or are you deputy leader? I don't know. You spoke about being able to find this 1.7 million for redoing a local plan. Well, if it's so easy, then maybe you could just apportion that to the school, because I actually think the Falkland School needs to have its work done as soon as possible. So if you can't find it by borrowing, if it's already available. But either way, you have a magic money tree like some other parties have, that you seem to be able to find 1.7 million from somewhere. To Councillor Codling, and also Councillor Brooks, on the one hand, you blamed us for £750 software update that went wrong, which seemed to be our issue. But on the other hand, the delay in Falklands was because you didn't have the staff. So either it's the administration's fault when things go wrong, or it's lack of staff. Either way, the fact is, since May, as pointed out by Councillor McKinnon, you've been responsible for it, and since May, nothing's happened on the Falklands School. I also would support splitting the amendments as well, because I think they're two different issues that should be dealt with separately. Other than that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Clark, and then Councillor Dick.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Culver, Councillor Marsh and Councillor Abbs, two of my ward colleagues there, for raising the profile even further of the pain and problems faced by the Falklands School. I think this is really important, and I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is that the funding is made available. So also thanks to Councillor Codling for addressing this point, and we'll keep on working on that. Thank you.
Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Chairman. We've heard quite a lot this evening from experts in IT. We all know there's various definitions of what that's about. So I feel appropriate to say something about education. I know a little bit about education. Do you know, I even went to school. So children are indeed the most important thing in our district. They are our future. We must care for them. I don't want to hear any drivel and any excuses. Project managers exist. The money exists. It's a scandal we're even talking about this. We must make this amendment in the plan. How can we possibly look our residents in the eye if we fail these children? They've been treated diabolically, in my humble opinion. And since it seems appropriate, because everyone else has done it, to pay homage to the acting leader, deputy leader, I'm not quite sure which. Goodbye, Mr. Chips. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Vickers, please.
Just assuming I will be allowed to speak again under the main debate. Is that all right? Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Just a very quick intervention as a former board member for Wash Common and now the planning portfolio holder. I'm afraid in the past, education has had a bad reputation for forgetting that you need planning consent for projects and has come in with retrospective or part retrospective. Now, of course, we're in a crisis now with the flooding, etc., so that puts a different complexion on it. But I do think it was more realistic to actually have the funding in a later year to allow the time that it takes. We've heard it's not even designed yet. We've just had a feasibility study. The time it takes to design and then go to planning with a designed project, and then, of course, go to tender. So if we can get it earlier, of course we will. But I think you need to project plan, which hasn't been happening terribly well in the past, will happen under this administration, I assure you. That's it, my only comment.
Thank you. So unless there's any further comments, we'll go back to Councillor Culver. Sorry. Sorry, I didn't see you.
In many respects, in terms of Falklands School, we're violently agreeing. I'd like to apologise to the school, but I think I'm apologising on behalf of the old administration. But I'll move off the politics for a moment now, I think, okay? Let me give an absolute assurance we are going to fast track this development. No question whatsoever. I'm going to get a report every fortnight, so is Heather Codling, and we're going to make it happen as soon as practically possible. That's the assurance. But we're going to vote against the amendment. Because we don't need to allocate £2 million in this year just for that project to sit around waiting for it to be delivered. If it is delivered, if those spades go in the ground, if those bricks are built, are put in, then we'll pay the £2 million, we'll get it done.
I promise you that. I don't think practically you can do it in a year, but by golly, we do our very level best. Now, in terms of your amendments, Councillor Abbs, with your 40 years in IT, you're not the only IT expert here, sir. On the 7th of December 1970, I started in data processing. Babbage and I went to school together. Hey ho. Listen, I don't think this changes the dial at all, sir. You talk about the staff. I think you agree the staff are under tremendous pressure. But let's give them old photocopiers and old IT as it, you know, the one thing you might be able to do to staff is give them the kit to be able to do the job. So that's not washing with us, Councillor Abbs. And interestingly, the money you save, you don't even put it towards anything. So that's interesting. Just save the money, put it in reserves. Okay, we need to build those up, but you might have decided to put them somewhere else in terms of some investment. But no, we can't accept your amendments. And thank you, Councillor Wollaston, on that wonderful archive building, which I remember voting for in 1997 at the old Berkshire County Council. It's a wonderful facility and we must keep it safe. So we are going to vote against these amendments, but for reasons that I want to make clear. There's no point allocating money you don't think you'll be able to spend. But if we manage to get it through planning, if we manage to get the spade in the ground, if we manage to get it built, if we manage to get it open, we'll pay the ruddy money and make sure that's in the paper tomorrow, rather than you saying we turned down an amendment to move some money around. It'll get done as soon as it can get done. Thank you.
Thank you. Now to Councillor Culver.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you everyone for your contributions to the debate. Councillor Marsh, I think, is going to go and have a lie down now, not because of the intensity of the debate, but because of how ill he's feeling. With the greatest respect to Councillor Brooks, if it is possible to do the work sooner, surely we can bring that money forward now, and then if it isn't spent this year, it can be pushed back. As far as I'm aware, there is still a budget line for Monk's Lane, even though we've apparently abandoned that. We've pushed it back. So why can we not bring the money forward and then push it back if we need to? You know, there's no harm in doing that. And it would send a signal to the school, to the teachers and the parents and the carers and the children, that we do honestly want to crack on with this. You know, we're all politicians. We know how this works. I mean, you make the point that you don't want us to be able to say tomorrow to the press that it was our amendment. You know, why not join with us in supporting this? And then we can all go forward together and say we all voted for this. It's a no-brainer. Thank you very much, Chairman. And a point of information, we'd like to have separate votes, please. Yeah, thank you.
That's what I was waiting for. Thank you. Okay, I think this is a very important issue. Sorry.
Point of, I did actually mention this earlier, but although Councillor Brooks indicating predetermined.
Sorry, is this a point of information?
It is. Councillor Brooks indicated that he already knew which way all the Lib Dems were going to vote on this on the amendments before we'd even discussed it. So a little bit surprised about that. But I did actually ask that my actual amendments,
Yes,
the
I am aware of that.
were split. I'm just
Councillor Abs.
making sure that we can do that if at all possible, please.
Thank you. Okay. First of all, in order, we have the original proposed original motion, Councillor Cottingham to actually reply, and then we will move to look at the actual splitting of the items.
Okay, no, so Councillor, so the closing order on any amendment is that the mover of the original motion, here Councillor Cottingham, is not allowed to speak except at the end if you wish to make any comments. So if you are not required to speak. I think then that Chairman, that we are in a position to move to the votes, although I think clarification around what is being requested by way of separate votes. And then, Chairman, that is for your discretion to determine whether to grant all or part of that request.
Thank you. So I'm minded as this is such an important issue that we will split the Falkland School project and the others will remain together. Thank you.
Point of information, apologies, Chairman. Councillor Abbs suggested earlier to yourself and to Mrs Clark that we could cover his topics in 4 lumps.
No, that's not possible. I've been told by officers that is just not doable. We did investigate.
Okay. So I think that Chairman, that is within your discretion. So I think there was some of it that couldn't be split, but Councillor Abbs has asked for 4 different votes in respect to elements of the second tranche or those that aren't Falkland School. And so it is a matter for you to determine whether you consider there is any merit in having separate votes on those elements of this proposed amendment.
Don't think they have the weight of the Falkland School, so we'll take the Falkland School as one and the amendments proposed by Councillor Abbs as another in a single block.
Thank you.
So. So now, members, I will now ask the monitoring officer to conduct the formal vote as we've discussed on the proposed amendments, separated as Falkland is from the others, so that they can be seen to be distinct.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. So in respect of the Falkland proposed amendment, Councillor Brooks, can you please give an indication of how the Liberal Democrat group wishes to vote in respect of this proposal?
I indicated that we'd be against this proposal.
Thank you. Can I now ask members of the Liberal Democrat group to confirm by raising their hands that they wish to have their vote recorded as indicated by their leader?
Please.
Thank you.
Please respect people's actions. Thank you.
Thank you. That I have all hands recorded as in agreement with the leader. Councillor McKinnon, can you please give an indication of how the Conservative group wishes to vote in respect of this proposal?
Yes, Mrs Clark, the Conservative group will vote in favour of this proposal.
Thank you. Can I ask all members of the Conservative group to confirm by raising their hands that they wish to have their vote recorded as indicated by the leader? Thank you. That is correct. And Councillor Culver, can you please give an indication of how the minority opposition group wishes to vote in respect of this proposal?
We would like to vote in favour. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I ask all members of the minority opposition group to confirm if they were in agreement? Thank you. So, Chairman, I can confirm that this element of the proposed amendment has been rejected.
Okay, thank you. So we will take now the second part.
Yes. So moving on to the second block of proposed amendments, which are on the supplementary agenda, reference 109, 112, 113, 124, 150, 216, 35 and 217. So Councillor Brooks, can you please give an indication of how the Liberal Democrat group wishes to vote?
We will vote against.
Thank you. Can I ask all members of the Liberal Democrat group to confirm if they are in agreement with the vote indicated by the leader? Thank you. And that is everyone. Councillor McKinnon, can you please indicate how the Conservative group wishes to vote?
On this part of the proposal, the Conservative group will vote against.
Thank you. And can I ask members of the Conservative group to confirm by raising their hands if they wish to have their vote recorded as indicated by the leader? Thank you. That is everyone. And Councillor Culver, can you please give an indication of how the minority opposition group wishes to vote in respect of this proposal?
We'd like to vote in favour, please.
Thank you. And can I ask all members of the minority opposition group to confirm if they are in agreement? Thank you. Chairman, I can confirm that this proposal has also been rejected.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I therefore now open the debate on the substantive motion.
Councillor Gawley.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Gawley.
Thank you, Chair. Across my portfolio, we are budgeting a significant capital investment in line with our strategic imperatives with regard to climate action, recycling and biodiversity over the next year and the future years. One of the key projects is the Graiseley Solar Farm and getting the work started on this in this coming year and allocating 2.5 million to this, and also looking forward to the second phases of that project as well. We're also continuing to look at how we provide solar PV on council assets, and in doing so, earmarking £700,000 to add solar to the Padworth Household Recycling Centre in 24-25, and also allocating a further 900 in the year after. Over the next 4 years, we're committing just over £17.2 million to delivering renewable energy provision and ensuring we make the most of saving money and the environment and investing here in West Berkshire. We're also continuing to ramp up our investment in electrical vehicle charging infrastructure, committing over 500k this year and delivering more on-street and off-street EV charging provision across the district. And this budget has also been an opportunity to look forward and recognise that solar PV is not the only way to harness the natural energy that this planet provides, and also recognise it won't get us to net zero alone. That we need to look over the horizon and really commit to investigate what other natural attributes the district has and look to other technology on the road to net zero. And that's why we're committing 140k for a microhydro feasibility study on our local waterways. Alongside the hardware and the technical, we're also looking at nature-based solutions. And here we are investing further in natural carbon capture methods, committing 100k on projects such as large-scale tree planting, natural regeneration, and improvements of wetlands across the district. We're also working to continue to deliver flood alleviation schemes with 1.8 million budgeted for Thatcham Memorial Fields in the coming year with support from the EA, with work in Hampstead Norreys and Great Shefford also in the pipeline longer term, as well as investigating flood mitigation around the River Lambourne and the Northbrook. I also commit to working hard to chase down funding and working with partner agencies to secure further funding streams to continue to make West Berkshire more resilient to climate change and more resilient to the flood risk that we have seen across the district so widely over the last couple of months. Despite the challenging fiscal position and careful balance between managing our borrowing, the capital budget delivers ambition and pragmatism for this coming year and the longer term. We have to be realists, though, and understand that climate action comes at a cost, but it's a cost worth investing in. And we must continue to look at opportunities to save money and even generate money and save the environment for the security of our planet, our children, their children, and generations to come across West Berkshire. So I'm really proud of this capital programme, and I look forward to working with officers and the executive and the rest of the council to deliver on it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Perhaps.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for that, Mr. Gawley. Sorry, Councillor Gawley. Yeah, it is good to see that some of the things that were started a while back are finally coming through. Well, let's take the Graiseley site for the moment, and you will have received my note about recent enhancements in technology in terms of agri-solar, in terms of the use of bifacial and vertical stacking of panels to make the site even more effective than was initially implemented. I assume that this budget doesn't obfuscate that possibility, that you're still, because the last time we talked, you were going out to the consultants to look at this. The other thing is the microhydro. You know, I'm a big supporter of this. It's another opportunity. We've many pieces of water that pass through our area, and we should be taking advantage of it. And I'm not quite sure, apologies, I haven't got that detail in front of me. I'm not quite sure where your project is aiming for, but I know there's a great need with the Lido and a great possibility to use the microhydro project there to generate energy, which would then heat that Lido for next to nothing. So I'm hoping if it's not that one, it's something like that one nearby. But yes, I'm fully supportive of these things because many of them are exactly what I'd hoped we would be doing as an administration anyway. So thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Councillor Jeffries.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And to the portfolio holder, I also would like to say thank you. Warmly welcome the desire to achieve the final element of the Thatcham Surface Water Management Plan, the swamp plan. It started from 2007, when most of us know, and many of us remember, that the whole of the district was inundated with rain, but Thatcham suffered grievously. If I say it was 1,000 houses that were flooded, it's an exaggeration. I think we were just below the 1,000. I think we were only about 980 were actually flooded. Getting this flood prevention scheme in place is the final element of the massive plans and work that are being conducted by West Berkshire Council and in conjunction with and funded by the Department for the Environment, or whatever their current name happens to be. 16 years of consistent planning, building, and now close to finally achieving a flood prevention scheme that would, if you had the identical rainfall pattern and weather pattern, it would mean that no house in Thatcham should flood. And I am warmly welcome that we are proceeding with this and getting the job done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Are there any further questions or comments? No. Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And it's a bit of a shame that we couldn't agree on that amendment, particularly on Falkland. It did seem that there wasn't really much to be lost by shifting some of the funds in there, but you voted against it for your reasons, and that's fine. Now, Councillor Cottingham, you started off, it was a long time. It's sometimes quite confusing to follow the order of these things, isn't it? Because he introduces the capital programme and then we go straight into a big long debate on the amendment and now we're back. But some time ago, you brought up the MRP accounting policy change, and you said, look, this is great because it's releasing, was it 4 million into the revenue budget, and apparently we were too prudent with this policy over the last few years. So on one hand, folks, we've brought the council to the brink of bankruptcy, but on the other hand, we've been far too prudent, and the Lib Dems can now open up the cookie jar. Rather inconsistent. You can't have it both ways, although Liberal Democrat campaigners often think they can, but there we go. Now, this capital programme, unamended as it is, there's a lot of good stuff in here. Quite a hard spreadsheet to follow, isn't it, sometimes? But I got my magnifying glass out. Thank you. And I found that 179 of the items in the 10-year capital programme have been rolled forward from our last capital programme. So it's good to see sound Conservative principles still being maintained by the Lib Dems opposite. Also good to see that a 10-year programme survived. I know that when I presented my budget a year ago, almost to the day, Councillor Cottingham, I've been in that position. I hope you're enjoying it. You're doing pretty well, I have to say. But when I presented my capital paper, Councillor Vickers, who's forever telling me he doesn't like accountants, and he doesn't like lawyers. Oh, I'm a law graduate as well as an accountant. I don't know what I've done to get into his bad books so much. But he told me that the 10-year capital programme is a bad idea. And actually we should keep it short term. So I'm glad that you've kept that, because it is important for proper medium term planning. Now we need to look at your manifesto. Potholes, you remember, in the Liberal Democrat manifesto, fix dangerous potholes within 24 hours and fix all potholes first time. No temporary fixes. Now, Councillor Gaines graciously admitted at the last executive that the council's response on potholes had not been good enough. 1 minute. Oh, time flies. You're having fun, doesn't it? The highway improvement plan is being cut from 26 to 27. It's £4 million now, but we're seeing it cut in a few years' time. Now, that is no use at all. We need to make sure that these roads are improved. They're in a terrible state at the moment. You know, a Bucklebury resident recently reported to his district councillor that he'd reported 5 dangerous potholes and they hadn't been fixed yet. A Bucklebury resident who you may know. And his district councillor's response was, well, you know, yeah, we promised a 24-hour response. But do you know what? David Cameron promised in 2015 that he'd allow councils to keep their business rates. So that's it. It's okay for them to break the promises because the Prime Minister 9 years ago promised something which he actually kept, by the way. It's not a good response to scrutiny. I'll leave it with this. I thought the Newbury Sports Hub was supposed to be cancelled. I read it in your leaflets, and I believe everything I read in your leaflets, naive as I am. It's in there for 2.3 million quid.
Can you
And
please
neither members
summarise?
nor officers can tell me what it's for. So come on, guys, let's have the answers.
Thank you. Any further questions or points? Councillor Vickers.
Chairman, I'd like to highlight the importance of new residential development in our capital programme. Local government may have an underfunded planning system, but the system does allow us to demand significant capital funding from developers of new homes, because they create a need for additional capacity in schools and roads and other things that our residents need. Things that we or others need to build, called infrastructure. Nowadays, most of that comes from the Community Infrastructure Levy, or CIL. And we have some control over how much we can charge developers for CIL, what it can be used for, and the timing of payments. Sadly, we cannot control the rate at which developers build the homes, so triggering the CIL payments to us. That is controlled by them and the wider market economy they operate in. Now, the total CIL spend forecast for the 10 years of the programme is over £43 million, adjusted every year for inflation. I believe it's a very low estimate, actually, of what we need. So long before the end of this programme, we will need to review the CIL charging schedule, which sets the rates at which CIL can legally be charged. And that comes down to negotiation between us and the development industry, with an independent planning inspector acting as the arbiter within a legal framework rather like that of the local plan. For next year alone, some 26 projects worth 2.86 million are totally dependent on CIL funding, out of the total CIL capital forecast spend for the year of 4.7 million. A further 17 line items in Appendix B in your papers are to a large extent dependent on CIL, or Section 106 if they result from planning consent before 2015. Now, these cover a wide range of kinds of infrastructure, which I won't list. They're in your programme, in your papers. We are not the only body that provides infrastructure, of course, which those residents need. There's the NHS to provide new or expanded surgeries. There's Thames Water for water supply and sewage treatment infrastructure. There's many others. And we collate all the requirements of these bodies which have a legal right to dip into the CIL pot. And that's done following the adoption of a new local plan, the basis for calculating what infrastructure the new homes in the plan will need. Now, CIL only came in 2015, 3 years after the current local plan was adopted. Everyone was working out how to implement it, and in retrospect, the outcome was not actually good enough. And I'm not blaming anyone, but we probably lost many millions of pounds worth annually for infrastructure. And that's why many residents resent new housing near them. People do accept the need for new housing.
Councillor Vickers, you have 1 minute.
But they've learned it doesn't deliver the infrastructure that's needed. So, to secure better levels of CIL funding in future years than you see in this budget, we must do a more thorough job of building the evidence from all the infrastructure providers in a new CIL charging schedule as soon as our local plan is adopted, which I want to move on with now as fast as possible. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We have Councillor Martha Vickers.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say a few words in support of the active travel initiatives in the capital programme. These aim to make cycling and walking safer and more attractive for our residents and improve their health and well-being. And in particular, I'd like to draw attention to the Safer Schools programme. Several schools in my ward are struggling to reduce congestion outside their school gates, despite trying hard to work with their parents and carers to encourage them to walk and cycle if they can, and sometimes, in some cases, providing parking at some distance from the school, where they'd have to walk just a little bit towards the school. But they are struggling to make this work, and they will welcome the support of the council with its practical programme. And this will keep their children safe, as well as reducing stress on the neighbours in the area who are also suffering from congestion in these streets in our town centres. So I just think it's worth drawing attention to that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Amrith Raj.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to commend this capital budget program on its focus on not just the business as usual projects, but also the core priorities of the strategy which we adopted. So not just on the business as usual, but also emphasis on the priorities which we adopted. Particularly, I'm pleased to know that the capital budget for the accessibility improvements for the Speen Moose Walk, which is an historic walk site in my ward, allocation of 117K, which will help the walks accessibility and a particular focus on the Lady Well in Spain, which is a Roman time Lady Well, and it will improve tourism and its importance. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any others? Councillor Lewis.
Good evening, everybody, and my first budget, so please be kind. So I shall focus on leisure facilities in this little report, and we want the most efficient and effective organisation we can be, and that means we need to continue to listen to the voices of our community and ensure that the services we design and deliver genuinely meet their needs across the whole of the district. The current financial climate is impacted by inflation, COVID-19, the Ukraine war, for example, and this is impacting on the prices of fabrics and materials. Sometimes it's even doubling and tripling the prices, and it's becoming a concern that some of the projects that we have going will go over budget and perhaps not even be delivered on time. So it's going to be prudent to invest time to review the contracts to see if they are still viable and to ensure that they will maintain safety, delivery and the expectations and meet the revised priorities and scrutiny. So we cannot ignore the current financial pressures, and nor can we continue to bury our heads in the sand. So we must take immediate and decisive action to deal with our financial situation and avoid further stress. So we need to get certainty, and we're doing that. So I recognise the aspirations to deliver additional facilities for sports and leisure. The Council is undertaking a playing pitch strategy that takes into consideration all sports to understand both the existing provision and what is required across the whole of the district. Following this review, the Council will look to review its play pitch delivery plan. However, any new project that requires capital funding will require business case approval before funding is agreed. And wherever possible, the Council will seek to work in partnership to generate additional grant funding to support development of sports pitches across the whole of West Berkshire. It is truly fabulous that we have such opportunities where we can deliver what we can deliver within this capital programme. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So, are there any other further questions or comments? No, thank you. So we will now. So I'm sorry. Councillor Gaines, I've missed you. Apologies.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, everybody, I've got a bit of a cold, so I'm trying to keep away from everybody and my throat's a bit sore. Every resident, wherever they are, notices the roads, the pavements, road signs and potholes. They certainly notice locally, they certainly notice them locally, but also when they're elsewhere. These are the areas of responsibility for my portfolio, which is the highways. In the capital programme, there's just under 8.5 million set aside for these important West Berkshire highway maintenance projects. This funding is from several sources for our own capital budget, community infrastructure levy, from local developers, also includes statutory central government funding, and obviously our own funding from the capital programme. But this funding isn't only to keep our roads and footways safe, it's also to make West Berkshire a pleasant and attractive place to live and work. If a place is well looked after, people will respect it. That's the broken windows syndrome, and it's real. With this in mind, here are a couple of items we've allocated funding for. Signage improvement and signage clearance, 55k. Footway improvements, 245k, and traffic signal upgrades, 70k. We want to ensure our villages that have a say in their own area, so there's funding for village speed limits, pedestrian rights of way, on-street electric charging points, and community transport capital grant. Last year, we actually had Downlands Electric Bus had 50K of our capital funding to launch one of their buses. Highways road safety is also another concern, as Councillor McKinnon actually said. Got it right that time. Ongoing replacement of street lamps and street lanterns and columns, road safety improvements across the district to reduce accidents, and essential improvements to bridges. That's in addition to what we've already got in the programme. We're also looking at sustainable transport, so active travel infrastructure, things like cycle lanes and canal paths, safer streets for schools, etc. That's £1 million for that. And our transport fleet upgrade. There are enough funding in the capital programme, which I'm delighted about.
Councillor Gaines, you have 1 minute.
Oh, sorry. Okay, a delayed. Diesel vehicle on order, a further diesel vehicle that's going to be forthcoming, and 1 electric vehicle. We're also looking at actually finding additional funding, such as the same as Councillor about Zebra 2. I'm trying to rush it through. Coming back to your answer on the potholes, we have had 1,881 potholes reported between January and February this year. That was in the same time last year, 116. It's 10 times the number of potholes, and from those 2 months. We've spent 400k more in pothole repairs in the last administration than you did in the last 3 years. We do fix dangerous potholes within 72 hours. They may not be fixed first time, but we do fix them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Codling.
Dare I return to Falkland and schools? As already said, we will be getting this one done. But I just want to highlight a couple of other items from the capital budget. Expansion of Parcel School to make space available for children with medium learning difficulties. It's an essential item that we need to provide. Thatcham Park Early Years, again, an expansion programme. And then there are smaller items in the budget around things like building works for foster families so that they can accommodate children that they're taking on. So there are some excellent things in this budget, and I really am pleased to support it.
Thank you very much indeed. So, may I risk inviting Councillor Brooks to speak as a seconder? You have 5 minutes.
I was really pleased that our portfolio holders spoke now in support of this programme. For several of them, it's their first budget, and that's an experience for them, and I'm delighted with what I've said and delighted to support them and this capital programme. But we have to deliver on this, you see now, don't we? Because there has been such a trend to slip projects. The average spend on the capital programme in a year has been around maybe only 60% of what we actually said we wanted to do in any 1 year. So you can announce it and say, we're going to do all this, then you have to deliver. And we're going to be looking at that very hard, because people have now got the expectation things will be done in year. And I'll go back to Falkland, it will be done in year if at all possible. So you now got to, I'm saying, I'm not talking to the chamber now, I'm talking to the people of West Berkshire. We've got a very good programme, and now we've got to deliver it. And that's our challenge. And that's the challenge of the paid officers to get it done as well. They're going to have to help us to make sure that we achieve more of a capital programme in a year than we tend to have done in the past. That's our challenge, but it's a very good capital programme. I'm delighted to second it and put it to the, and I'll say it again in a moment, Sarah, but we will be voting for it.
Thank you. May I invite the mover of the motion, Councillor Cottingham, to make concluding comments, please.
So thank you very much, Chair. So yes, again, would like to thank everyone for the robust debate. I think in summary, this particular capital programme protects the finances of West Berkshire Council. We don't overextend ourselves. There is a hell of a lot in here which delivers to the residents of West Berkshire, and I would like to commend this report to the council.
Thank you. I will now ask the monitoring officer to conduct the formal vote.
So because this is the substantive vote on the capital budget, I will be conducting a named vote. So I will run through a list of all members alphabetically, and I would ask that each member confirm whether they wish to vote for, against, or whether they wish to abstain in relation to the proposal. So Councillor Adrian Abbs.
I will be abstaining.
Councillor Anthony Armitage.
For.
Councillor Phil Barnett.
For.
Councillor Dennis Bennyworth.
Abstain.
Councillor Dominic Berwick.
Abstain.
Councillor Jeff Brooks.
For.
Councillor Patrick Clark.
For.
Councillor Heather Codling.
For.
Councillor Martin Colston.
For.
Councillor Jeremy Cottam.
Abstain.
Councillor Ian Cottingham.
For.
Councillor Laura Coyle.
For.
Councillor Caroline Culver.
Abstain.
Councillor Paul Dick.
Abstain.
Sorry. Councillor Billy Drummond.
For.
Councillor Nigel Foote.
For.
Councillor Denise Gaines.
For.
Councillor Stuart Gawley.
For.
Councillor Clive Hooker.
Abstain.
Councillor Owen Jeffrey.
For.
Councillor Paul Kander.
Abstain.
Councillor Jane Langford.
Abstain.
Councillor Janine Lewis.
For.
Councillor Ross McKinnon.
Abstain.
Councillor Alan Macro.
For.
Councillor Eric Pattenden.
For.
Councillor Justin Pemberton.
For.
Councillor Vicky Poole.
For.
Councillor Christopher Reid.
For.
Councillor Matt Shakespeare.
For.
Councillor Richard Sumner.
Abstain.
Councillor Stephanie Stevenson.
For.
Councillor Joanne Stewart.
Abstain.
Councillor Louise Sturgis. Councillor Clive Taylor.
Abstain.
Councillor Martha Vickers. For. Councillor Tony Vickers.
For.
And Councillor Howard Wollaston.
Abstain.
Thank you, Chairman. I can confirm that those proposals have been carried.
Thank you very much indeed. With that, I think all this hard work and hot air, down to the air conditioning, of course. And I mean that sincerely. We're hoping to get somebody in to fix it because I don't know if you are, but I've had enough. Anyway, up here it's hotter. So anyway, so I need an adjournment, and I'm sure that pretty much, or we have 15 minutes adjournment. Thank you. Right, thank you, everybody. So we move to agenda item 7, the revenue budget, based on pages 103 to 454. May I invite Councillor Ian Cottingham to formally move the recommendations on page 103 and 105 of the agenda pack, please.
Thank you, Chair. I formally move to approve the recommendations.
Thank you. May I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second, thank you.
You reserve the right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cottingham, will you please introduce the report? You have 10 minutes to explain.
Thank you very much, Chair. So as previously discussed, the primary purpose of a budget is the financial representation of a strategic plan. Also, from a statutory perspective, we have a legal requirement to pass a balanced revenue budget. And from our perspective, there's also a moral obligation to pass a revenue budget which protects the long-term finances of West Berkshire Council as a going concern, whereby we continue to rebuild the depleted general reserves of the council. As a council, we deliver over 700 different services and initiatives that we do to keep our residents, nearly 170,000 of them, safe and healthy, which costs an increasing amount to do so. During the 23-24 financial year, the UK faced its highest level of inflation for over 40 years, which had a severe impact on our day-to-day operating costs, which, unlike the private sector, were unable to counteract our rising cost base by increasing our prices mid-year. To compound matters further, West Berkshire Council faced significant increases in client demand for council services for both adults and children, which were way above the original projected numbers in the 23-24 budget. While special education needs and home to school transport costs have also risen through a combination of cost inflation and greater numbers of clients. Furthermore, and due to the cost of living crisis, there has been an increase in the demand for temporary accommodation as a result of homelessness in West Berkshire. With the above in mind and previously discussed, the process of setting the proposed 24-25 revenue budget commenced within 8 weeks of us taking office after the May 2023 elections. As a reminder, we had a projected overspend of 8 million, which would have exceeded the reserves of 7.2 million. We have brought back West Berkshire from the brink of bankruptcy, with the current projected revenue budget of 23-24 showing an overspend of 3.3 million. This will leave us with 3.9 million of reserves, i.e. 8 days of reserves to start the new financial year. The dual impact of price and demand inflation in adult and children's social care and education is considerable strain on the finances of West Berkshire. In 2021-22, this amounted to 77 million, but is now projected in 24-25 to cost us 105 million, a 28 million, 36% increase. As an administration, we are committed to protect the most vulnerable residents of West Berkshire. Hence, this budget has an increased investment of 12.4 million in providing care in this area. As an order of magnitude, 40 individuals will cost West Berkshire 10 million annually next year. As previously discussed, our primary aim is to balance the revenue budget whilst topping up our rainy day revenue reserves, along with maintaining our duty of care to protect the most vulnerable. This has meant we have had to find cost efficiency savings and revenue increases totaling 14.5 million within the 24-25 budget. We, as an administration, undertook a comprehensive consultation exercise with almost 2,500 online responses, and many in-person comments and responses were received via public meetings held in Hungerford, Thatcham, Burfield, and via our own YouTube channel. The impact assessments are an important part of the budget process, with stage 1 and some stage 2 assessments completed. These equality impact statements are included within the budget report, and they are part of our considerations when making financial decisions budget this evening.
Councillor, you have 1 minute left.
I have 10 minutes.
You have to have 10 minutes in total.
Additionally, a meeting was held on the 23rd of February with members of local business community. Businesses were provided with an overview of the changes to the business relate release and an overview of the council finances and budget proposals. A number of questions and comments were raised, including how much lobbying the council was doing to retain more business rates locally to support the area, the impact of car parking charges increases, the need to ensure staffing in the planning service and support processing of planning applications, and questions on the detail behind the government's new improvement relief for businesses and how this would work. Which we responded to. I would like to personally thank everyone who provided feedback to our consultation process. We found this a very worthwhile and insightful process listening to West Berkshire residents. This has resulted in us deciding 300k of saving proposals not being adopted in the 24-25 budget. We will not be reducing gully clearing, which people will appreciate, especially given the recent floods. We will maintain our dog bin and waste bin collections, but we'll be talking to parish and town councils about taking them over. We think that may well be more effective. We plan to reduce the frequency of grass cutting without harming the environment. We will not be reducing the frequency of weed spraying, nor reducing the community transport contribution or penalise vulnerable adults who utilise our transport provision on a daily basis. We have listened to residents and identified ways to avoid damaging cuts, even with the most profound pressures on our services. So what does this mean for our 24-25 budget for residents of West Berkshire in terms of council tax and strategy? As previously discussed, our tax funding requirement in 24-25 is 124 million, which will require a council tax increase of 2.99% and a 2% increase in the adult social care tax precept. Thus, a planned 4.99% increase in West Berkshire residents for council tax 24-25. The good news, however, in terms of council strategy following the investments will be made. 12.4 million protecting the most vulnerable, 25k road sign cleaning, 700k home to school transport cost, 143k of family support workers, and a manifesto commitment, 100k to reduce the annual green bin tax from £58 to £55 per annum, 100k's worth of voluntary community sector and 500 community funds, along with an additional 200k of member bids. So on the question of financial resilience, it's been the policy of the previous administration to whittle down your rainy day reserves to a reduction of 9 million over the last 2 years. I think everyone in the chamber and watching online will agree this is not a sustainable long-term financial strategy to spend more than your income. Unless you are a believer in Liz Truss's reckless approach to budgetary management. I do have a confession to make, however. Like Liz Truss, I am a senior accountant. However, this accountant, like every West Berkshire householder, knows you cannot spend more than you earn. Despite the projection of this financial year end to have only 3.9 million days of, or 8 days of reserves, the financial challenge facing West Berkshire isn't unique. Previously discussed, more than half the council said that they were likely to be unable to balance the books in the next 5 years. As a consequence, in this election year, central government have recently announced a further 600 million funding local government authorities. We have taken the prudent decision to pay the additional 1.9 million funding into general reserves, therefore increasing the general reserves from 8 to 12 days, a 50% increase in your risk contingency. However, still well below the recommended minimum level of 18 days. We plan to maintain this policy of prudent financial resilience throughout our administration by adding to reserves in a structured and balanced way. In conclusion, our revenue budget delivers our manifesto commitments to protect the most vulnerable in West Berkshire by investing 12.4 million and reduce the green bin tax. We've listened to residents and incorporated their feedback on what is important to them by not cutting 300k's worth of services. And finally, we have a planned budget surplus of 1.9 million to top up reserves, thus improving our financial resilience of 50% by 50%. I move to commend this report.
Thank you very much. I believe there's some amendments that the Conservative group wish to put forward. Councillor McKinnon.
Yes, I'd like to propose the amendment as laid out in the agenda.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
That'll be me, Chairman.
Thank you. So you will have 5 minutes to move the amendment, Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Buck.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thanks, Councillor Cottingham, for that presentation. Our amendment is sensible, it's measured, and I hope finds favour with all members across the chamber. It's manifesto time again, folks. Those lovely yellow leaflets said that you would scrap the green bin tax. Remember that one?
Yeah, please don't interrupt the speaker.
Thank you, Chair. Those yellow leaflets said they would scrap the green bin tax. And digging into the manifesto, we find the small print that they will phase it out over the next 4 years, starting with those who can least afford to pay. The proposal in this budget is none of those things at all. Those who can least afford to pay the green bin tax, respectfully, probably already don't pay it because it's optional. And those with small gardens or no gardens have got different ways of disposing of green waste. They can compost, they can take it to the household waste recycling centres and so on. Now, what this is a cut across the board for the wealthiest in West Berkshire, as well as those on the lower incomes. It's not meeting your manifesto commitment. Now, we all know it was a silly commitment. And I know that many Liberal Democrat members agree with that in private. And this proposal is not phasing it out for those who can least afford. It's better to bite the bullet now and save our services, because a below inflationary increase in the charge of just £3 will generate £201,000 more income compared to this proposed budget. That's money that we can use to prevent some of the really biting cuts that have been proposed by the Liberal Democrats. We want to help young people's mental health by keeping our 1.0 FTE in the Emotional Health Academy. Councillor Gaines just told us in the Capital debate that it was so important to maintain bridges and to keep that going, and yet we have a cut of 80,000 from the revenue side of that equation. Some inconsistency there, I think. Imagine there's an accident caused by those cuts. None of us want to be in that position, surely. And then planning enforcement, every member in this room is being told by their parish councils and residents that yet another planning breach has gone unenforced. Look, that across the district, that damages our green spaces. It damages our residents' confidence in the council. The other part of our revenue generating amendment is to cut the size of the executive from 10 down to 9. Now, the last Conservative administration, which, let's be honest, seems like a utopia of sound and stable management compared to the last 9 months of the current lot, we coped just fine with 9 executive members. Immediately.
Oh, yes. Where is it?
Immediately.
Where is he?
If I get a wee bit more time there, Chairman. Immediately on taking power in May, they bumped up the exec to 10. Not a great look, folks, when finances are so tight. But look at their portfolios now. Their leader's already done a runner because he's made a complete hash of it for 9 months. And this absentee leader, who's still an executive member with the tiniest portfolio in West Berkshire's history, well, they clearly don't need him. And to be honest, it's an insult to the residents to have an executive member with such a tiny portfolio for PR purposes in a general election less to come. Do the right thing. You don't need the 10 and save the residents some cash. And not part of our amendment, but just my final comments on this. Cutting the green bin stickers. How are Veolia going to know which bins to lift and which bins not to lift? Now we know, oh yeah, there will be a list in there. You be a refuse collector in one of those bins, down those leafy streets, all of the houses have got names on them. You've got a list. You're going to lift whatever bins are there. Bins are going to be collected regardless of whether they're paid, and that then is going to damage the revenue stream. It's a silly idea. It's not going to work. It's not part of our amendment, but we're flagging it up now. You have been put on notice. I hope you'll agree, folks. Those are sensible amendments, and I hope it finds favour across the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burke.
Does he wish to reserve?
You wish to reserve your right?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I now open the to debate. Councillor Abs.
Yeah, thanks very much. Well, I remember that manifesto, and I remember it specifically saying phasing. They're doing exactly what they said they would do. I really don't see any issue. I do think Councillor McKinnon, has a bit of an issue though, because he clearly hasn't talked to enough people on the doorstep. Because he may not have had the request, But there are umpteen requests that I've received personally saying, why haven't you finished it yet? Not why, not have you started it yet? People want it got rid of as fast as possible. That's the majority of the people. Now, I don't think even my fellow colleagues in the minority group were all going to agree, not all going to agree on this. But if I stood on the doorstep and said, I'll do my best to get rid of it, and then the administration gets on with getting rid of it, I really got no worry with this at all. And I'm not sure why you should have an issue with it either. The green bin tax is a barrier to things. It is not any kind of advantage.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments or questions?
Yes, thank you,
Councillor
Chair.
Gortley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, so we talk about the green bin tax. You know, it is a barrier to people doing the right thing. You know, the consultants show that if you phase out the charge, the tax, people will invest in it. Invest in doing the right thing and therefore increase recycling rates. That helps to divert waste from landfill. It helps to avoid the release of methane gas. It cuts down household journeys to household waste recycling centres. And up until fairly recently, it was actually part of government policy to look at making it mandatory and therefore funding councils to do it. Therefore negating the need to charge for that. So, you know, I think it is a barrier to people doing the right thing. We are helping to save people's money and the environment by removing this tax. We are committed to it and we are sticking to a manifesto pledge and delivering on that by phasing it out. In terms of the lists, the stickers on bins, you know, this is a substantial decrease in admin. It's helping reduce plastic and also officer time. And actually, Veolia do have a list. They do know their communities. They do know the areas where they work, and they do know what houses pay and don't pay for bins. And those that don't utilise their bin have, on the vast majority of cases, returned those bins and no longer hold on to them. So I absolutely, you know, I don't support this amendment, and I absolutely am committed to phasing out the green bin tax as we have stated in our manifesto. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Williston.
Thank you, Jim. The draft budget proposes that green bin charges should be reduced from £58 to £55 at a cost of £100,000 per annum. The service is popular and well used. As far as I can estimate, about 70% of the households that would ever use it already do so. However, under these plans, the 30% of the households who probably have no need of a green bin would each be paying about £5 a year to subsidise those who do or can. Not a huge sum, but a subsidy in the wrong direction. Nor is the service currently expensive. Brian Quinn of the digital newsletter Penny Post did a quick survey of 10 neighbouring councils, of which at least one is run by Liberal Democrats, which revealed the charge for a single bin ranges from £60 to £80. Our charges are already the cheapest in the area, and they would now become more so. Were the charge to be increased the average of the area, £67, this would, rather than costing £100,000, raise £300,000. But our amendment is more modest, being a £3 a year increase, below the level of inflation, but generating an extra £200,000 to retain service levels and a small contribution back to reserves. I have a single bin, as I have a small garden, and having someone clip my clippings and weeds 25 times a year is very efficient and convenient, saving me having to bag it up and take it to the tip. So not only is it a great value for money, but it's environmentally friendly as well. The suggestion has been made that there was were the charge to be increased, usage would fall, or more people would burn the stuff on bonfires. I rather doubt this. Recently cut vegetation doesn't burn well, and most people have got out of the habit of lighting fires. However, there's also a moral conundrum. I don't think that I, as a property and garden owner, should be subsidised by someone who lives in a flat, possibly on a low income. In a very small way, that's exactly what this situation is doing, and it doesn't feel quite right to me.
Thank you. Councillor Vickers, please.
Chairman, planning enforcement. I absolutely agree with Councillor McKinnon. The residents are very unhappy about planning enforcement. It does bring the whole service into disrepute. But I have it on good authority from one of your former members that it was your administration, possibly before your time, that actually made a savage cut in the enforcement resource some years ago. And of course, it's not a statutory requirement to do planning enforcement at all, which is a matter for primary legislation to sort out. Now, we have started to redress the situation, and very soon, I think within a matter of weeks rather than months, there will be a report which is almost ready to write on what we will do about improving the processes. And I want to clear up the misunderstanding that there is no role for local councils, parishes and towns in enforcement. However many enforcement officers you recruit, same as however many policemen the Thames Police Authority recruits, you can't have eyes and ears everywhere with the professionals. So my intention is to spread out the resource in a way that there is a better understanding, not only amongst our members, but amongst parish councils, that we need them and every resident actually to tip us off at the first opportunity when they see something that they believe shouldn't be happening. Because the sooner you can get things, like all services, prevention is better than cure. And unfortunately, the legislation does include a test of reasonableness. And if things have got too far, we can't argue that we can undo them. I have started to get copies of the letters that go out to people who have triggered a request for enforcement action so that I can better monitor the situation. But very soon you will see an improvement. But it's not, we're not alone in this council in having cut enforcement. Unfortunately, so many non-statutory services have had to be cut under the pressures local government is under.
Thank you, Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Chairman. Planning enforcement. I think my colleague across the way misses the point. And my inbox and my phone they're full of these kind of complaints. Local people, law-abiding people are very frustrated by very flagrant breaches of planning rules and laws. So they report it, they talk to their parish, the parish reports it, it goes into a black hole. The frustration is enormous, to the extent where, of course, some people who probably would prefer not to abide by planning rules, but feel they should, are starting to think the other way. Yeah. And this problem is getting bigger and it's getting worse. So I'm sorry, we can't ask people to tip us off if we're not prepared to do anything about it. And as far as people can see on the ground, West Berkshire Council don't care. Now, those of us who've talked to the officers will know that they're under-resourced and understretched and all sorts of excuses. They need fixing. This problem will cause a lot of other problems if it's not fixed. So I'm very anxious about this. Of course, I support the other benefits that would come from our amendment, but I don't want anybody to be in any doubt about the importance of planning enforcement. I, for one, am a believer in upholding the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Sorry, Councillor Sumner, sorry, you did indicate earlier.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Dick stole the opening line from my mouth, to be perfectly honest. I think you are missing the point, Councillor, because with respect, my parish council is massively engaged in looking at what's going on in developments in the area. And more to the point, look at what's going on in those developments that shouldn't be going on. They're also heavily engaged with the residents around the developments who also report directly into them because it's their easy conduit in. The issue is not that. The issue is that there isn't enough time for the officers that we have to do the work that needs to be done. It's a very complex district that we live in, as I'm sure you will openly recognise. It's not easy for people to get around, and it's not easy for the officers to get around everywhere. There's absolutely no chance of them covering the district. You could treble, you could times them by 100. They wouldn't be able to cover the district. They are already reliant on residents and on our parish councils, our excellent parish councils that know their areas. So it is about doing what I was doing as a portfolio holder and supporting the need for those officers to be there. I think it's unfortunate that it's got to this point. The biggest challenge that was in place previously was actually to make sure that people were applying for the roles and staying in the roles, which is the same across the council. We need to keep enforcement. Noting you're absolutely right, it's not statutory. We need to keep it high up the list of priorities of things that we're doing when we talk about planning. And if we can't support the officers by making sure that we've got enough people there, we need to rethink the way that it's being done across our district and wider. We need to look at what other authorities are doing and whether we can work with them in the same as we have in other areas. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to take us back because it was 2018 when this charge was introduced. Let's remember, this was a service that people used to get within their council tax payments. And the government came out with this wheeze that said you can charge for this now. So this council, the previous administration, latched onto it and said, oh, whoopee, a new stream of income. But let's be clear. We were taking something away and saying, we'll give it back if you charge for it. That we don't agree with. We didn't agree with it then and we don't agree with it now. So we're trying to get it phased out. There was a point only a few years ago, a couple of years ago, we read that Michael Gove was thinking of actually phasing it out anyway, but he didn't follow through. And I'll tell you why he didn't follow through. Because councils all up and down the country, having started to charge it, having got seduced in it, are now on the drug of the money that it brings in. But it's fundamentally wrong. And we're going to stick with that. And I don't care if there is one Liberal Democrat or three Liberal Democrat councils up and down the country. They have different issues. It's fundamentally wrong to take something away and then say, now you can pay for it. And we won't change our mind on this. Now, as to the size of the executive, Councillor McKinnon, years and years and years, way before you arrived, you had 10 on the front bench. And I'm not absolutely against the idea that over the passage of time, when we have got to grips with an enormous number of issues we have to get to grips with, an enormous number. Every day we find more issues that we have to grip. We need 10 people to cover the portfolios to achieve that. If we get to a point within a couple of years, as I intend to do, that this council is running much more smoothly, where we've used transformation to change the way we deliver things, we've taken strain off people, then Councillor McKinnon, bring your amendment again, because the chances are, oh, you might be in a different place by then, of course, we would support it, but it's too early. And so I'm sort of opening the door a little bit to that, but not now. So green bin charge, you can keep putting your amendments up. We're going to keep phasing it out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Bennyworth.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't going to speak on this, and I apologise for having done so. Initially, I'd like to bring up Councillor Brooks, if I may. In a budget not too many years ago, I remember him saying that we didn't serve our residents well by voting down every amendment. It sounds as though that might be going early days. I appreciate it. It does smack. A £3 reduction in the green bin tax equates to 5.75 pence per week. Now I'm giddy with excitement as to how to spend my 5.75 pence per week. It does smack a token gesture, really, when so many of the manifesto pledges are looking to fail at the moment, or have already been set underway by the previous administration. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments, or shall we? Sorry, Councillor Jeffrey, how could I forget you?
Mr. Chairman, that's twice in the evening. Yes, how can you forget me? Colleagues, you're not going to like what I'm going to say, but it's the truth. If you hadn't bequeathed us a £9 million black hole, we could have our planning enforcement officers. If you'd actually run the finances of this authority in a prudent and sensible way, we could be looking at all sorts of exciting things we could be doing right now. That's where your planning enforcement officers and our planning enforcement officers are missing. They're missing because it's another of the things that we need and that we want it on this side of the chamber, probably even more than you want it on that side of the chamber. We want to run the council properly. We want to run it effectively. And unless you've got the cash, you cannot do it. As I believe as an accountant, you're going to tell me that you already know that. And by the way, let's stick with the green bins just for a while. We made a pledge many, many years ago that we would scrap the green bin charge, and we will. This is the first step. It is not the last step. We're going to get rid of it. And the people that live in West Berkshire will be saying thank you. I think they're saying thank you already. Many thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments? I'll go to, I believe, Councillor Bowick.
Bowick. I don't understand. Thank you. I don't understand Councillor Jeffrey's point about planning officers. We could have as many planning officers as you could have, as many as you want if the finances were different. You're talking about reducing income, and to compensate for that, you're going to reduce the planning officers. That's your decision. You're also going to reduce the headcount in the Emotional Health Academy, and I really wonder what Councillor Codling thinks about that, whether she supports that particular line. Again, you've heard from my friends on this side about the nonsense of expecting parish councils to do even more than they're doing in terms of monitoring what goes on in their parishes. Executive reduction. Councillor Brooks, you only have 9 executive members at the moment. So why not stick with that and save the money? Thank you.
Thank you. So we come to Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to everyone who's just spoken. So we left you an £8 million black hole, nothing to do with inflation or demand on social care. That's what we did for these guys. Liberal Democrat councils who are struggling financially, they haven't done that to themselves. That was inflation and demand that did that to them. But come on, change the record, folks, right? Nobody buys it. I'm sick of hearing history lessons. I really am. We're talking about the here and now. You need to take responsibility for decisions that you are making right now. By cutting this green bin charge, by not putting up by, was it 5p a week? Then you are cutting planning enforcement. You are cutting bridge maintenance. You are cutting the Emotional Health Academy. That's our young people's mental health. And you're doing it not even to fulfill a manifesto commitment. This is not phasing out the green bin charge, starting with those who can least afford it. This is not what this is. It is just a cut across the board. It's not even a manifesto commitment, folks. Take responsibility. Now, I suspect you've done this because you found out that it's either too expensive or too difficult to identify who are the people that can't afford to do it. So you've just done this sort of halfway house fudge, a bit like you've done with the leadership. Okay, we're getting a pattern here of how the Liberal Democrats operate, really. You don't need 10 people. You don't have 10 people. Throw the residents a bone, save the 10 grand and get on with it. So it looks like you've decided not to support a very sensible and measured and calm set of amendments. I presented 4 of these budgets, Councillor Cottingham, and the chap sitting next to you, the acting leader, and he's doing a good job, isn't he, folks? Yeah. The acting leader, 4 years in a row, said, don't vote it down just because we came up with it. Come on, we've got some good ideas on this side of the chamber as well. Well, guess what we do? This is one of them. And I hope you change your mind at the last minute. My fingers are crossed.
Thank you. So we now go back to Councillor Cottingham, please, if you have any comments you wish to contribute.
I don't.
Okay, thank you. Go to my monitoring officer to take the vote, please.
Thank you. So these will be block votes. So Councillor Brooks, can you please give an indication of how the Liberal Democrat group, wishes to vote in respect of this proposal?
We'll vote against.
Thank you. Can I please ask all members of the Liberal Democrat group to confirm by raising their hands if they wish to have their vote recorded as indicated by their leader?
Now, please, let's have respect for other people's views.
Thank you. That is all members. Councillor McKinnon, can you please give an indication of how the Conservative group wishes to vote in respect of this proposal?
Conservative group will vote for this proposal.
Thank you. Can I ask all members of the Conservative group to confirm whether they agree? Thank you. That is all members. Councillor Culver, can you please give an indication of how the minority opposition group wishes to vote in respect of this proposal?
Thank you, Chairman and Mrs Clark. We'd like to vote differently on this, please.
Thank
As you know, we don't have a whip.
Okay, thank you. So can I ask Councillor Abbs how he wishes to vote?
Against.
Councillor Culver?
Abstain.
And Councillor Taylor?
Abstain.
Thank you. Chairman, I can confirm that that proposal has been rejected.
Okay, thank you. We have amendments from the minority group. I believe Councillor Clive Taylor, you're going to formally move this?
Yes, I will formally move this amendment.
Thank you. And is that seconded?
Yes, I second that, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, you have 5 minutes to put your point.
Thank you, Chair. This council has choices in setting this budget, and I wish to propose an amendment to cancel the £3 reduction in the green bin charge, to retain the green bin labelling, and to transfer the saving this would generate to the adult social care transport budget for the following reasons. The £3 reduction in the green bin charge, which is less than the cost of one coffee in most Newbury cafes, will satisfy very few of our residents currently paying the charge. Put another way, it's a saving to each green bin user of 25p per month. At this rate, it would take nearly 20 years to eliminate the charge, and it isn't going to make any real difference to individual or family budgets given the overall council tax increase. I realise the Liberal Democrat administration had the phasing out of the green bin charge as a manifesto commitment, and all I'm really questioning in this amendment is whether now is the time to start that phasing out, given the financial situation we face and the other priorities we should consider. Removing the labelling of the green bins indicating who has paid that charge will make it difficult for our contractors to identify who has paid and who hasn't. I live in a block of flats where some residents have private garden areas, and it will be impossible to tell who has paid as all the bins get lined up together next to each other. The same will apply to properties with shared or adjacent driveways. I believe it is likely that there will be a reduction in those signing up for the charge if the labelling is removed, in the belief that if they will their bin up to the roadside, it will most likely be emptied anyway. I therefore propose that the labelling is retained. In setting this budget, I believe we should prioritise lessening the impact of our budget savings on the most vulnerable and in need of care residents in our communities. I read the feedback from the recent consultation on the proposed cuts, and I was moved by some of the feedback to the adult social care transport budget. I quote some of that feedback. First quote, I would ask that you look into specific cases, especially those of my 80-year-old mother with dementia and COPD, and is already struggling on pension credits. Quote 2, please don't do this. The disabled are amongst the most vulnerable in any community, and a wealthy community like West Berkshire ought to be able to prioritise funding so that the most vulnerable are the most protected and supported, rather than targeted for further marginalisation through the imposition of prohibitive and possibly discriminatory costs. Third quote, my husband uses the transport to get to and from the day centres, and we already pay a £30 a month charge for him to be able to get to the centre. If this proposal comes in, that will be an additional £80 a month that we need to find. Other comments indicated that this will also have an adverse impact on carers themselves if those they are caring cannot afford the increased travel, thereby increasing their care requirements at home. So as I see it, it would be far better to help these people, some of whom may become isolated, suffer mental health issues if they can't get out as they did before, and to really pass this saving on to those people rather than reduce the green bin charge with a barely noticeable £3 reduction. So let's do the right thing. I urge you to support this amendment, which will transfer £57,000 to the adult social care transport budget so that we can at least reduce the financial impact on some of our most vulnerable residents and on those that care for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Culver, do you wish to speak now?
Thank you. Yes.
5 minutes.
Second now. Thank you very much, Chairman. First of all, a confession to make. As many members of this chamber will know, the Green Party were actually opposed to the green bin charge when it was first brought in, but we are happy to change our mind and to face up to that and be open and honest and transparent about that. So I'll make that point first and foremost. This charge brings in vital revenue. It is paid for in the main by people with larger homes and gardens, as Councillor McKinnon pointed out. The council is in dire financial straits at the moment. We are in a worse situation than we've been in the past, so I don't think we can afford to lose this money. We've had to make £8 million worth of savings this year alone. Adult social care is more important, I believe, than a £3 saving. This affects vulnerable, ill and disabled people. At this rate, it's going to take 2 decades to phase out the bin charge fully. Some of us might not even be in this chamber. We might, be in a better place. I think ending the provision of bin labels, I think, is going to cause chaos. Anyone who's been to the tip knows that the operatives have to use the iPad to check whether or not you've booked in. I've been there before when there's been a long queue of people, which is no criticism of the operatives. Something's obviously gone wrong with the system temporarily, and we've been queued up out onto the road. Are we really going to see the bin operatives standing outside houses saying, oh, there's more bins here than have been paid for? They're not going to do it. They've got a job to do. We already see them running up and down the street trying to get their job done. They're just going to empty those bins and take them away. And then what's going to happen in subsequent years? People who pay for the bin and notice that the neighbours who aren't paying for the bin are getting it emptied anyway are going to stop paying. So we're going to see that income drop anyway. I think it's a crazy idea. With respect to Councillor Brooks, he said that we shouldn't be charging for things that people used to get for free. Well, the proposal is to remove transport to and from day services as part of an individual's care package and introduce a flat charge. So that's the exact opposite of what you've said this evening, Councillor Brooks. I'd like to quote from the Equality Impact Assessment. These individuals will have budgeted for how they use their limited income. Some individuals may choose to reduce or cancel their transport and attendance at day services due to financial hardship. The document also goes on to say that this conflicts with council key strategic priorities, in particular having a fairer West Berkshire with opportunities for all. The document also says that it may increase social isolation, something which has got worse since COVID. It also says the protected characteristics of age and disability would see the greatest impact. Are we happy to carry on with this policy? It's crazy. If users cease using the transport service, the cost and demand on other services within social care or health sector could increase. So we could be adding to our cost in the long term. We could see the income from the green bin come down, as I've mentioned, and we could also see our other costs going up to compensate for the fact that people are not using the bus service anymore. So the proposal is manifestly unfair. The Equalities Impact Assessment makes a very stark assessment about why it thinks that it's a bad thing. This was written by our officers. It goes against the spirit of the council strategy as well, something which has only come in the last few months. Are you going to go against that already? The bin charge and the bin sticker proposal will achieve very little in terms of kudos to the administration. I think, as we said, it's going to take 20 years, you know, doesn't make any sense. So please do support Councillor Taylor's amendment, and please don't go ahead with the chaos of the unlabelled bins. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Now with that, I will open the debate to the proposed amendments. Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not going to rehash the points about green bins. They were obviously part of our amendment, which failed. This is very, very similar to the amendment we proposed. It doesn't quite go as far as increasing the charge, but it cancels the cut, which is fine, and it chooses to invest the proceeds in another very worthy cause. And I think that Councillor Taylor did a very good job of explaining that. So I'm absolutely minded to support this. And I'll just finish by saying, do you know, sometimes in these debates, you sit down and you think, oh, I should have said this, you know, we've all been there. And then sometimes somebody else says something that says, I wish I'd thought of that. Yeah. And Councillor Culver's point about the adult social care transport being taken away and then charged for absolutely torpedoes one of the arguments from the other side. So kudos to you for that, Councillor Culver. Yeah. I completely agree and support your amendment completely. Yeah.
Councillor Marsh, my apologies, should have got to you earlier.
That's right. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Culver talked about people being in the chamber in 20 years' time. I'll be glad if I'm still here tomorrow morning, quite frankly. Anyway, I've not got a lot to add to what Councillors Taylor and Culver said in really excellent speeches. But just on this point about the paper stickers, the Treasury predicted that when paper car tax discs were abolished in 2016, it would save the government £10 million a year. In fact, it's led to a tripling in evasion and an annual cost to the Treasury of more than £100 million, according to the DFT and DVLA's own statistics. So I would suggest something similar could happen if you take the stickers off. No one's explained that. Great if somebody over the other side there in the ruling group can explain how this is actually going to work. It seems to me it's just been scribbled down on the back of a cigarette packet to make the amount that this measure will cost a bit more manageable. The fact is, we simply think this money could be put to better use. I would, if I was allowed to vote, I'd have voted for the Conservative amendment on bins, because we're grown-ups in this group. And I can tell you, having watched this meeting from the standpoint of a member of the public, being on Zoom as I am, it's not a good look. Everyone's sticking their hand up, voting for something, whether they agree with it or not. I mean, it's really not. That, however, is not what the amendment is about. As has been said, it's people who don't have gardens subsidising through their council tax, people who do. It's a potential disaster waiting to happen if you just casually get rid of the stickers to save money. And I would finally add, I thought that the two minority group speakers made an excellent case for the adult social care money. I think it's a much better use of this saving. I also think that the Conservatives had a good point about planning. That's serving the people of West Berkshire is about deciding what's best and voting for it, not deciding how someone tells you to vote and sticking your hand up. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kanda.
Hi, thank you. So I guess a couple of things. I'd like to thank the administration for their budget, because what it's done actually is unite everybody else this side of the chamber. Clearly, I was in favour of our amendment with regards to the green bins and the savings that could be done, but I'm also in favour of this one over here because I think they did an excellent job. I think the adult social care piece is very important. Transportation is very important for people who are sick, ill or unable to do it. I benefited from myself when I had a kidney transplant 18 months ago because I was unable to drive. My wife was unable to take me. You know, and whilst that's a different area, it's still the same thing, which is the transportation was available. It made my life easier, and that's what we need to do. In terms of other things such as the labels and what have you, this is all pandering to your former leader who's now absent and the manifesto promises. What you're looking for is to get a small tick in the box that someone can stand around and say, we have fulfilled our manifesto promise of starting to whittle away at this. With nobody's getting any benefit from it, 5 pence a week. I mean, I pay for the bins. I think I should pay for the bins because I've got 2 big gardens and I'm able to pay for it. I don't expect someone else who doesn't have a garden to pay for my free stuff. And the fact that it used to be free and now it's not, that happens all over the world, I'm afraid, because that's what happens with budgets at the end of the day. Things change and things should change. You say that we shouldn't invest in the planning people because it's not a commitment we have to do. Oh, but getting rid of the green bins is? No, it's not. So look at your priorities, decide as individuals rather than as en bloc, because en bloc, I think you're failing this community.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Brooks, please.
This has been well argued. You know our position. You're never going to vote against. The stickers is interesting because we've had advice that this will work well. And if it doesn't, we'll bring them back. Simple as that. We're going to try it. Because we've had the advice that says it will work. If that advice is wrong, we'll change. But you know, I'll say what I said earlier. We took away something that was there. You can mention other things, I know you have. This one to us is fundamental. That's where we are. I suggest actually the amendment might be put now because I think we're going over 2 amendments. One thing I've also said to Councillor McKinnon, you know, we are voting amendments down tonight, aren't we? You didn't put many up though, did you? Didn't give us a sort of an array that we might have been able to pick a few. I mean,
Now,
like
please.
last year, you know, I mean, what is it?
Councillors, please.
Two
Don't
amendments
speak
on
across.
the revenue budget. Good gracious me. Now, last year, but 17 years worth, we put up dozens. I don't mind going back and looking at them all. And do you know there was only one taken? I bet we put up 100 amendments in 17 years. Now you got me started now. And do you know you only took one? And that was capital because you were going to change the lamp post to LED lights and you were going to do half of them. And we said, why don't you do all of them? And even then you blinked and went, oh yeah, good idea. And we went, bloody hell, that's 1 out of 100. So you didn't get 1 out of 2 tonight or 1 out of 6, you know, relax, you will get some, believe me, but you won't get this one.
Excuse me, please.
You won't get this one. Okay, now a little bit of drama later in the evening. Councillor Marsh is now sitting there saying, what a horror show this is. I wish you better, Councillor Marsh, but actually this is democracy. Sorry and all, that's how it works. Thank you, Chairman. We'll be voting against.
We have. Well, Councillor Brooks, did you put a proposition there of what the question be put?
The motion to put the amendment.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, you know, they might want to, they might not.
Excuse me, am I not going to be allowed to speak on this? No. Oh, you're just going to the vote, that's all.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just very briefly, Councillor McKinnon mentioned on probably more than one occasion about an elephant in the room. And he also said we need to make changes here and now. And I would suggest to you, Mr. Chairman, that the big elephant in the room is the government. The fact that local authorities are not getting adequate funding for things like adult social care transport. And that is the big thing. So I would suggest that we need a general election as soon as we possibly can and get rid of this government.
Councillor Abs.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You promise something, you start to deliver it, and you're told you're doing it wrong. I remember the first few weeks of being on the administration, and watching the 100-day count go down and the constant news stories about how we hadn't achieved anything in those first 100 days and so on. So, yeah, okay, this is politicking. Let's move past that, please. This is a very serious issue. The adult social care, Councillor Foote, thank you very much for bringing that up. It is the critical point here. Councils are not funded correctly in this area. No, there wouldn't be any budget problem if we solved this. So I absolutely admire what my two colleagues have just said. It's so persuasive. I was almost going to vote, but I can't because the voters told me they wanted the green bin charge gone. So I will abstain in this time, not vote against. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Macro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't really, be honest, I really don't want to charge for things like adult social care transport. But the dire financial situation is forcing things like that on us. But in fact, this council is very unusual in providing free transport for adult social care. In fact, very few councils provide transport at all. After looking at the consultation, we decided, first of all, we wanted to try and cap the charge for those clients who went to the resource centres and the places where they got employment for the learning disabled. Was going to try and cap that at 3 return journeys a week. Unfortunately, that would mean having to change our invoicing software, and we're not able to do that in time. So what we're proposing to do is to reduce the proposed charge from £5 per trip to £3.75 to ease the burden on the people who make these repeated trips. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have Councillor Jeffrey, please?
Oh my God. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just address Councillor Kandar? I'm glad that you're okay to pay an extra £3. I'm not sure it's come out in this element of the discussion, but I believe you still can. I believe you can voluntarily contribute the same figure that there was before, the £58, and that £3 will be taken off and put into various good processes and courses. Now, I stand to be corrected if that is not the case. I believe it is the case.
Thank you. Councillor Colston.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly, a few members opposite have mentioned the cross subsidy of people with gardens and people without gardens and the green bins. And I'd just like to say, I think that's a spurious argument. We don't say that people without children shouldn't be contributing to education. We don't say that people without cars should not contribute to roads. And we don't say that people without elderly relatives shouldn't contribute to adult social care. So that particular argument, I think, is moot. Thank you.
Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to respond to Councillor Colston. The point is that if you remove the charge from everybody, then definitely the lower paid tax payers will be subsidising the people well off who will have big gardens and producing loads and loads of green waste. Simple as that.
Thank you. Any more? I think we've done this one quite thoroughly.
Yes.
So we will go to the proposer of the amendment, Councillor Taylor.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. I think I only have a few words to say, really. It's been an interesting debate. However, sorry, I've just spilt my water there. However, I think what I've proposed is a pretty sensible amendment, and I really do hope that some of the members opposite will support it. Yeah, I think it has many merits, and it does try to address issues, affecting some of our most vulnerable residents. So I indeed urge all members to support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Tottingham, you wish to add anything to this?
No, I don't.
Thank you. In that case, I will ask the monitoring officer to conduct a formal vote on these proposed amendments.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I please then move to Councillor Brooks? Can you please give an indication on behalf of the Liberal Democrat group as to how they wish to vote in respect of this proposal?
We'll be voting against.
And can I ask all members of the Liberal Democrat group to confirm by raising their hands if they wish to have their vote recorded as indicated by their leader? Thank you. That's all members. Councillor McKinnon, can you please give an indication of how the Conservative group wishes to vote in respect of this proposal?
Yes, of course. The Conservative group will vote for this proposal.
Thank you. Can I ask all members of the Conservative group to confirm by raising their hands if they're in agreement with that? That is confirmed. Thank you. And Councillor Culver, can you please give an indication on behalf of how the minority opposition group wishes to vote in respect of this proposal?
Thank you, Chairman and Mrs Clark. We're going to be voting differently again on this one.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Abbs, can you confirm if you are for, against or abstaining?
I'm afraid I'm going to have to abstain on this one.
Councillor Culver?
For.
And Councillor Taylor?
For.
Thank you. Chairman, I can confirm that this proposal has been rejected.
Thank you. I therefore now return and open the debate on the substantive motion. Executive, please.
Councillor Gawley.
Councillor Gawley.
Cool. Yes, thank you very much, Chair. So I think we talked enough about how this has been an extremely challenging budget to deliver in the current financial situation of the council that we inherited. We inherited it in an extremely perilous financial position, as we talked about a lot, and we inherited it from the previous Conservative administration, which we've also talked about a lot. And, you know, we also inherited it with significantly lower reserves than compared to other councils, which we've also talked about a lot this evening. However, despite that, this budget delivers for residents this coming year without any major changes to services across the climate action, recycling and biodiversity portfolio. And critically, we have delivered a budget that doesn't make changes to any services focused on tackling climate change, and thus ensuring that we continue to work towards our council's strategic imperatives and ensuring that the critical journey to net zero is at the forefront of everything that we do. We're also sticking to some of our other manifesto commitments in a financially prudent manner. And we are committed to help residents save money and the environment. And we're also committed to delivering more recycling at the curbside and make this available for all. And that will help support residents to do the right thing. Overall, this is a forward-thinking budget that delivers for residents without continuing to undermine the financial position of this council like the previous Conservative administration has done year after year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I would like to thank this administration and officers for the no doubt very challenging task they've had in order to submit a balanced budget. And I'm not damning with faint praise, that is sincere, because I remember how difficult it is, particularly in both adult and children's social care. I suspect that although this coming year will be a tough one, that the year to follow will be even tougher. Listening to other local authorities who've already approved their budget for 24-25, one thing is clear. At the local authority level, we cannot fix the health and social care challenges we face right now, not for adults or children. We can only do our best to move funding from one place to another, fighting fires in many cases, the crisis management that Councillor Cottingham talked about earlier. And with our increasingly ageing population and an increasing demand for complex needs care, the system needs a major overhaul, and we've heard that. And I want to say that central government, whoever that may be, need to listen to the warning messages coming through from the majority of local authorities. I can see that many items make sense in terms of the savings proposals. I hate to say it, but they do. For example, line A18, West Berkshire Care Home transformation, which was part of the budget savings consultation, along with line A28, increase in care home fees, together realising £350,000 in annual savings. Those are sensible things to do, and actually the consultation showed that our residents understood those. Line A25, bringing in income from other local authorities for shared lives placement. Our shared lives scheme is excellent. It's only £10,000. It's not a huge amount, but this is a good step and something we need to do more of in other areas where we are able to claim income. And then there are other aspects that concern me. As an example, line A17, the sensory needs team, restructure service and remove team leader post, £48,000. One of the critical functions and beliefs we share in this Council for Adult Social Care is that everyone deserves the right to be able to live as independently as possible for as long as possible in the place they are most comfortable, quite often their own home. Last year, I supported a resident who had been registered as blind. Dealing with the loss of his sight, combined with wanting to be able to continue to live and stay in his own home, was very much a real challenge and concern for him. For anyone in that situation in terms of their sight loss or indeed losing their hearing, it is an extremely worrying time, and our residents need to be able to reach out to this council's services so they can receive the advice and support they need. We already have a rather concerning waiting list for sensory needs. There has been a vacant post for a number of months, and this has led to an increase in the number of people waiting, reported to be 77 in January this year compared to 39 in the same period last year. I'm hoping that this savings proposal, which is removing a team leader post, is not going to make this situation worse for some of our most vulnerable residents. And one other example is reablement. We have an excellent reablement team. It's an in-house service, and we offer to assist patients who are being discharged from hospital with reablement goals to get them back to being able to live independently. As I said earlier, this is something that is not only the best thing for the individual concerned, but it also generally costs this council less money in the longer term. I hope that the proposed cuts to these roles will not see us exposed to higher charges for long-term care as a result. And to quote Councillor Brooks, I'll be watching. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I think that was very warmly welcomed. Well done. Okay, so unless there are any comments or questions, we have Alan Macro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you for your contribution, Councillor Stewart. And I would like to join with you in thanking the adult social care staff and all the work they've done to actually reduce the expenditure in this current year, where they've saved getting on for £1 million. I think that's very well done. Regarding the sensory needs team leader, this is purely administration, so that should not affect the waiting list. And also, when it comes to reablement, yes, we do have a very good reablement service. Unfortunately, it costs us a lot of money. It costs us twice as much as some other councils to provide that service. And what we've actually done is to actually reduce rather than offering reablement to everybody who came out of hospital, we're now providing it to those people we know are going to benefit, and that's already saving money. The big issue, of course, is that the current budget we're working on 23-24 didn't budget sufficiently for the high client numbers we're seeing in adult social care, and it didn't provide enough for inflation either, or for the actual wage award that was given to local authority staff. So that's why we've ended up in having to make these significant savings this year, and those savings having to go forward into next year as well. And again, as I said before, we really don't want to make these changes, but the dire financial situation is forcing it upon us. After consultation, we're proposing following savings. First of all, to transfer the operation of our care homes to independent providers. When we consulted on the possible closure of Willow's Edge care home, the response was broadly supportive of the transfer. So we're now proposing to do that for all of our care homes. This transfer would have been.
Councillor Macro, you have 1 minute left.
would avoid the problems associated with closure, particularly on the clients and on our staff. The charge for adult social care transport are covered already, and there was one piece of good news the increased fees for care homes was in last year's budget, but it should have been consulted on, but wasn't, so it had to be reversed out. So now we've done that consultation, we're going to bring that back in. Not all doom and gloom. We're also proposing to invest in the recruitment of a shared lives officer to actually support providing the service to other councils, but also to provide support more carers who can then support more clients in a very valuable, well-run service. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Abs.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. I'm pretty sure we would all agree that we're fighting here a revenue budget with one hand tied behind our back because of essentially social care and the way it's essentially not controllable by the council. And thank you very much, Councillor Stewart, for pointing out that as well during your speech. We actually have 3 councillors here tonight who are going to be fighting to be MP in Parliament shortly. One Conservative, one Green, and me. So we have a 4th, although absent this evening, the Leader of Council, that if we were so minded, and I will be bringing a motion to Council, so I'll give you plenty of heads up, to the end of talking to Parliament about fixing this and coming up with a proper system once and for all. If we do, and if we all agree at this council to follow that motion when it comes, we will have 2 MPs in Parliament fighting the case to fix this once and for all. And to be honest, I'm going to abstain on it because it's not something I can really go in favour of. But I think we do have power here, and we can use that power for good by actually taking it to where it belongs, which is Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you very much, Chairman. We again here harking back to the Conservative budget and the Conservative leaving the new administration an inheritance. The Conservatives left office with reserves £3.5 million higher than in May 2019. Over that period, reserves went up and then they went down. That is what reserves are for. That is what's supposed to happen. You build them up when you can afford it and you draw on them when times are tough. You will recall a little something called COVID, which required quite a lot of drawing on those reserves. And as for Councillor Macro's point about the current budget not budgeting sufficiently for inflation or demand, this is a budget to which the Liberal Democrats brought precisely 0 amendments and followed the Bank of England's inflation forecast. But look, you didn't discover anything when you take over. Stop obfuscating. Right? The finances are open. Local authority finances are open. This isn't corporate mergers and acquisitions where you have to get a crack team of accountants in to do due diligence. You're presenting your budget tonight in exactly the same format with exactly the same papers as we did. So if we kept things from you, what are you keeping from us? There's no difference here. Change the record, folks. You know, we're in a perilous financial position, Councillor Gourley, one that you guys were willing to make much worse with the local plan withdrawal and your ridiculous stunt. Oh, you may well groan. Please. I'd be groaning if I was in your position. Groaning with embarrassment. And you've helped yourself to £4 million a year with an accounting tweak. We didn't do that. We were prudent. We heard it from the horse's mouth. Thank you, Councillor Cottingham. I love it. Be straight with the residents who have to pay your higher parking charges. You can't find money for them, but you could for your little local plan withdrawal stunt. Be straight with the parents of Falkland School. You can't afford a project manager, but you can afford 1.7 million for your local plan withdrawal stunt. And tell that to the residents, all the residents of West Berkshire who want to see a prosperous local economy. Look at this table at 9.5. It's got the 6 council strategy priorities. There are priorities, remember, put through a thesaurus. Didn't even change the order. I can't believe you published this. Look at the investment in the council strategy for priority 4, a prosperous and resilient West Berkshire. Nothing. No. 0. No. Zip. I cannot believe that you had the nerve to publish this. But just underneath it, you've got money on Faraday Road football ground. Remember that? Yeah, that was land that was earmarked for early commercial regeneration for a prosperous and resilient West Berkshire. Yeah, let's spend a couple of grand on that and a porta cabin and some posts, but we'll take the land out of the economic regeneration's genius. West Berkshire is closed for business with these protest politicians in charge. You're damned by your own table. Take a good look at that. Well, your leader's already done one because everything's fallen apart and he's left his deputy to pick up the pieces. He is at once the leader, but not the leader. He is Schrodinger's leader, ladies and gentlemen. Broken promises all over the place, blaming anyone else but themselves. How many people have they blamed tonight? They tried to withdraw a sound local plan and cause chaos all over the district. An executive which doesn't know what it can or can't do, whose members complain loudly that West Berkshire Council isn't just Newbury and Thatcham. It's your executive.
Councillor, you have 1 minute.
What a shambles. I don't need 1 minute, I need 1 second. Let's hope this budget doesn't fall apart as quickly as this administration has.
Councillor Vickers.
Chairman, there isn't much in this report for my portfolio, but mostly it's business as usual. However, page 203, Appendix D, investments, the line D2, local plan review, says awaiting political decision, which is no longer true. And the next line, planning fees, is money that we were expecting 10 months ago, and only now can be factored into future years, thanks to the government allowing us to charge nearer the cost of processing applications, but still subsidising developers. And then there's the delay in announcing and then granting the uplift in fees, which is the main reason we couldn't tackle the backlog that we inherited last May. The increase had been factored in for a whole year, so it left us with the deficit forecast on income at the very start. Whilst we were successful in applying for the one-off grant announced in July and knew that in late December, we still haven't received the 90k from that. But it's the climate change agenda that I wish to touch on. The list of savings measures, I'm really pleased to see, does not include anything in priority 3 of the council strategy, which says tackling the climate and ecological emergency. Because we are very serious about dealing with these existential crises for humanity as far as we can. There are many other crises in public services. Local government is particularly exposed to them. I won't start a list, but they all pale into insignificance when compared with what will happen if every one of us don't act urgently to tackle this human-induced climate change and our damage to the amazingly diverse and wonderful life forms that we depend upon. And with every year that we fail to take action, the cost of dealing with it rises, and eventually it could be impossible. So do you want your children and grandchildren then to say, why didn't you do more as a councillor to deal with it? Well, I don't. In an emergency, the country should be on a war footing. I don't see that, do you? We're daydreaming into disaster. There is still time to deal with it, though.
Councillor, you have 1 minute left.
By realising that what we call the economy is a human construct. The planet doesn't know anything about GDP. In reality, the economy is just a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment. The younger generation are passionate about this. And we have a government, meanwhile, kicking the issue down the road, distorting the facts, ignoring the experts, failing to be responsible leaders in this. Now, running this council are several extremely able, entrepreneurial and hardworking younger members like Stuart, who you've heard, who is supported by an excellent team of largely young officers.
Councillor, can you please summarise?
We're determined to use these council resources to give hope to our residents, to lead. And that's what we're doing, Chairman. We will lead our way out of this as much as we can and encourage our residents and all organisations in this district to do that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Codling.
Thank you, Chairman. I will be very brief. I want to reiterate what Councillor Cottingham said, and that one of our most important duties is looking after the vulnerable in our society, whether that's older people or children with additional needs and those in schools. The complexities of the needs of young children, of young people at the moment is increasing, and this has put huge pressure on our budget, and we have had to make significant improvements for that. Our numbers of children in care have stabilised at the moment, and that has helped with our budgeting process. We have also reduced the number of social worker agency staff from 30% to just over 20%. That's again assisted in our budgeting process, and that will continue in this coming year. We're also recruiting more foster carers. There's a budget there for recruiting and training foster carers. We've recruited 16 so far this year, and there are more in train at the moment. We're recruiting more. This investment is important. We've also, I also know that we have put in increased funding for home to school transport. The costs there have gone through the roof and has caused huge problems. So we've had to put additional funding in there. I think this is an excellent budget and want to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Gaines, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Others have already said this, but we did consult widely on this revenue budget with our residents. Given that we had an extremely wet start to 2024 with large areas of the district flooded, we listened to residents and said, no, we wouldn't take that saving on the gullies. Councillor McKinnon said earlier on about the bridges. There is 300,000 in the capital budget for essential improvements to bridges. The maintenance area of that is actually down to weeds and things like that. There is still in the budget the funding for essential structural and infrastructure checks. So it shouldn't make any difference to bridges. We're not about having them falling down. The other area, the other area is the 10K from the community transport funding. We looked at that and decided that actually, no, we couldn't afford to put our community at disadvantage. So we didn't take that £10,000 savings either. But one of the other areas which is firmly on my radar is an important element in the council strategy, and that's the empty homes. There are too many properties around the district which stand empty. We have families who are desperate for a home to call their own. Councillor Costingham said earlier on that one of our overspends this year is temporary accommodation for homeless families. That is only increasing. So I'm delighted to announce that from the 1st of April this year, we will have the ability to charge an additional 100% premium on any empty property once that property has been unoccupied and unfurnished for a year or more. That's double the council tax, which should encourage people with empty homes to actually either fill them or sell them. We also intend to charge an additional 100% premium from the 1st of April 2025, having given a statutory 1-year notice on second and holiday homes. Again, with that 100% premium, as I said. We need homes for local people who want to live and work here. This is a challenging budget and has been a challenging budget, but we intend to make it work. Thank you.
And Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Chairman. So revenue budgets must be allocated to the delivery of the statutory responsibilities of the council. And that means we have an obligation to provide some services such as exercise support and education for health. We cannot ignore that our current financial pressures or bury our heads in the sand any longer. So we must take immediate and decisive action to deal with our financial situation and avoid further stress. We need to get certainty. So I'm pleased to share the news that there is funding to prevent, for example, cardiovascular disease or CVD. This requires thinking out of the box, so there will be CVD initiatives across services to help our residents. So it's not just about involving leisure, it will also include wellbeing, library services and sport as part of the CVD prevention activity. Linear budgeting, so resources and financial support are not duplicated. The view I want to see when I hover over all the services and look down is to see dynamic dot joining, not the chaos of sporadic pairings of dots or dots working on their own. We'll provide services in the best facilities to meet future needs and demands, rather than making do with less ambition or shortcutting aspirations. In other words, fudging up an idea or trying to put a square peg slot into a round hole. There is funding allocated for improvement and maintenance of bridleways and rights of way, including supporting volunteers. Also, capital funding, Berkshire, Buckinghamshire and Oxfordshire Wildlife Trust, who look after West Berkshire's rural environment. When I was elected, I made it very clear that I would ensure all four corners of the district would benefit from the investment and services, and that is what I've started to do and will continue to do so. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments? Sorry, not twice. With that, I will actually move that to the conclusion of the debate and ask Councillor Brooks to speak as a seconder.
Chairman, Councillor Cottingham has provided the main commentary on the budget. We're beginning to deliver on our manifesto and therefore the council's strategy. It is rather too easy for our opponents, particularly the Conservative opposition, to carp and cavil across this chamber, but people aren't stupid. They know that the Conservatives had 18 years to deliver good services. And frankly, like their government, who have had 14 years, there isn't very much to show for it. We have begun to roll back the green bin tax. We have football being played at Faraday Road. We have reintroduced community forums, and Councillor Culver is doing a very thorough job as chairman of our scrutiny committee, the first person to do the job who is not a member of the ruling group, since a chap called Brooks was sacked from the role by the Conservatives in 2006. I wonder what he was doing wrong. We faced a perfect storm when we took over this council. We faced a perfect storm and we have weathered it. It is tough, Councillor Stewart. Thank you. We're working very hard indeed. We've got tremendous talent on these benches. I'm very proud of you all. Thank you. My video, and I know you have all watched it, goes into a bit more detail about this budget. I'm proud of this budget because it's been very hard. You know how hard it is. Now we know. I get it. We get it. But people aren't stupid, you know. They read about the financial crisis within councils, and they may well be very relieved that here in West Berkshire, their services have been protected through this budget. Now, Councillor McKinnon, it had gone so well. But then you have to resort to insults. Protest politicians. I'm not going to trade those sort of student debating tactics with you. Rise above it, sir. Build your opposition over time. Don't cut to the chase and go running around on all sorts of social media saying we're a shambles. That's ridiculous. We're not that good enough to make it a shambles in 9 months. Give us a chance. I'm being sardonic, you know, for the avoidance of doubt. For the avoidance of doubt, you know, you learned how to make a shambles of it. You had 18 years. So please, temper your opposition, temper your comments, please. And we can continue to have a nice relationship with the odd curry. We will keep working hard and we will make a real difference. This is the start of the journey, and I'm delighted to second this revenue budget. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. May I invite the mover of the motion, Councillor Cottingham, to make concluding comments, please.
Right, as they say, follow that. So I would like just to pick up on a conversation from Councillor Stewart. I think really key to this budget is making sure we have balanced budget. We're not going into section 114. As councillors, we're all here to represent and service the community we live in. And the last thing possible we would want the council to go bankrupt. If we were to go bankrupt, literally commissioners coming through the door would cost us £1 million. And that £1 million would be lost to adult social care, children and family services. So it has been a really difficult process. Just yesterday in the press, it did say, Section 151 officers saying this is the hardest it's ever been. I'm in no doubt there's been a baptism of fire coming from the commercial world. However, what I would say that there is real desire to make sure we succeed within the council, within the officers, and hopefully within this chamber. So I hope everyone in this chamber will vote in favour of the budget. We're here to protect the most vulnerable, and we see a way through of increasing reserves and improving the financial resilience of the council. I commend this budget to.
Thank you. I will now ask the monitoring officer to conduct the formal vote.
Thank you, Chairman. I will now read through the names of all members in attendance in alphabetical order, and I would request that members confirm whether they are for, against, or whether they are abstaining from this vote. So, Councillor Adrian Abbs.
Abstain.
Councillor Anthony Armitage.
For.
Councillor Phil Barnett.
For.
Councillor Dennis Spennyworth.
Against.
Councillor Dominic Bowick.
Against.
Councillor Jeff Brooks.
For.
Councillor Patrick Clark.
For.
Councillor Heather Codling.
For.
Councillor Martin Colston.
For.
Councillor Jeremy Cottam.
Abstain.
Councillor Ian Cottingham.
For.
Councillor Laura Coyle.
For.
Councillor Caroline Culver.
Abstain.
Councillor Paul Dick.
Against.
Councillor Billy Drummond.
For.
Councillor Nigel Foote.
For.
Councillor Denise Gaines.
For.
Councillor Stuart Gawley.
For.
Councillor Clive Hooker.
Against.
Councillor Owen Jeffrey.
For.
Councillor Paul Kander.
Against.
Councillor Jane Langford.
Against.
Councillor Janine Lewis.
For.
Councillor Ross McKinnon.
Against.
Councillor Alan Macro.
For.
Councillor Eric Pattenden.
For.
Councillor Justin Pemberton.
For.
Councillor Vicky Poole.
For.
Councillor Christopher Reid.
For.
Councillor Max Shakespeare.
For.
Councillor Richard Sumner.
Against.
Councillor Stephanie Stevenson. For. Councillor Joanne Stewart.
Against.
Councillor Louise Sturgis. Councillor Clive Taylor.
Abstain.
Councillor Martha Vickers.
For.
Councillor Tony Vickers.
For.
And Councillor Howard Wollaston.
Against.
Thank you, Chairman. I can confirm that that proposal has been carried.
Thank you very much indeed. And thank you everyone for your attendance, and remotely or otherwise. And I now formally close this meeting and ask the Zoom host to end the live broadcast. So can you please